Okay, so we're going to, I will dispense at this, good morning, Mrs. Holly.
Good morning.
And I noted your appearance yesterday at 9:30.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for coming. And we're going to continue this morning, and I will complete the roll call as soon as I find my list. We'll continue with the testimony or cross-examination of Dr. Sanders. And sir, the testimony you're about to give will continue under the oath you took yesterday to tell the truth. Do you agree?
I agree.
All right, thank you. And Ms. Freitas, thank you for allowing us to interrupt you yesterday. Please continue.
Excuse me, Judge. Were you going to complete your roll call?
I am, as soon as I find my sheet. Sorry, I apologize.
I
have that sheet someplace.
Can you turn this on? Doesn't seem to be working. It's stealing. Thank you.
All set? Whenever you're ready, Ms. Freitas.
Okay, hold on. Page now. Okay, I wasn't too sure when I asked the question, but I'm gonna repeat the last one. On B page. Yeah, B as in boy. The second page, which is A9, the CMP page, PDF file 20, page doc is 2-3. I asked you if the CMP maintained consistency with the 2000 master plan. Future updates to the plan should be consistent with the CMP. Doesn't this paper speak for itself?
I think that sentence speaks for itself.
So that's a yes, right?
Yes.
Okay. So can you go into your A documents, as in Apple? So all plans has to follow the A48, which is the master plan in the design, construction, access way, parkway, etc. And if you go to page in there, A3, it'll indicate on the top A3, PDF file 59, doc page 2-15.
Could you repeat that? So here's A3. Page.
You got A? I got it labeled as A, B, C, and that's how you can distinguish.
Okay, this is an A.
Okay. Turn to the document that says A3 PDF file 59 on the far top right-hand corner. And on the bottom of the page will be the doc page 2-15. It's almost halfway through the pack of papers.
A3.
Yes, and it says TMT Observatory Design on the top page.
Correct.
And if you go halfway down, I think yours is highlighted. It says a total height of roughly 80 feet above the current ground surface. Do you see that?
Yes, 180 feet.
And then you go a couple more sentence down, it says a reflecting aluminum light exterior. Do you see that?
Correct.
Okay. Turn to the next page, which is A1, the CDUA, page 19, PDF file, doc page 1-8.
Yes.
Do you see halfway down, the highlighted area says the total dome height will be 184 feet above finished grade with the exterior radius of 108 feet?
Yes.
And if you go down, in that same area, it has a reflective aluminum light exterior coating.
Yes.
Then if you turn to the next page, A1 CDUA PDF file 20, doc page 1-9. On the top, it states a 34,304 cross square feet. Do you see that?
Correct.
Highlighted. And then if you go halfway down, the supporting building will be attached to a dome, which is in figure 1.6. The building will have a roof area of approximately 21,000 square feet and the cross interior area of roughly 18,370 square feet. Do you
Yes.
see that one? Can you turn to the next page, which is Exhibit A5, doc page, PDF file, page 22, and the bottom of the page just says I. Project description, which is halfway in that page.
Yes.
It states the area E. It states the power, the utilities, the installation, and as well as the building and then Halepohaku. Do you see all that?
Yes, I do.
And you confirm you see what the paper states?
What are you referring to?
The project description.
I see that.
Okay. Turn to the next page, which is doc exhibit A7, page number 16. The highlighted area on the top page states the total dome height will be 184 feet above finished grade with an exterior radius of 108 feet. The dome shutter will be 102.5 feet in diameter. Do you see that part?
Yes, I do.
And then also the next sentence, it says the fixed cylinder construction below the rotating base will be enclosed at 34,304 square feet. Do you see that part?
Yes, I do.
Then if you go down to that page, the TMT access way, the proposed access way will start with the intersection of Mauna Kea Loop, which considered the batch plant, that area. And a sub-meters array SMA roadway, the majority of the access road will follow either the existing four-wheel drive road or the wider roads that serve SMA. The existing single-lane road was built in 1960. Only 200 feet of the 3,400 feet long route will deviate from existing route. Do you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So wouldn't you say in A9, which is in your B pack, as in boy,
Yes.
wouldn't you say that all these plans and all the sub-plans is not inconsistent with the A48 plan design, the master plan?
Could you please repeat the question?
By reading all these exhibits, do you think isn't it fair to say that is not inconsistent with A48, which is the master plan?
I wouldn't use a double negative. I would say it's generally consistent with the master plan.
So if it's general consistent, A9 states, as the CMP maintain consistency with the 2000 master plan, future updates to the plan should be consistent with the CMP. Is that correct?
That sentence is clear,
And it states what it states.
but I don't understand its relationship to my testimony that the design descriptions that you just read are consistent with the master plan. Both of those are true, but I don't understand the relationship between them.
Well, the relationship is the master plan is above all plans. Is that correct?
I don't know that.
Object to the following question, misstates facts and evidence.
Well, the facts states right here.
Could you just rephrase it maybe?
Okay. In your A packet, A23, which is the TMT management plan, page 4-23, PDF file 185, states the TMT has complied with the design guidelines presented in the 2000 master plan and the master plan project. So did TMT's design plan comply with the master plan is the question.
Generally, it's consistent with the plan. It complies with it.
Wouldn't you think it's fair to say A9, PDF file 22-3, the CMP maintains consistency with the 2000 master plan, future updates to the plan should be consistent with the CMP?
Object to repetitious asked and answered.
I'm just referring what it states. The paper speaks for itself, and I'm just stating all this.
I understand.
Okay.
Has he already answered that particular
Okay.
question?
Okay, let's go into construction. Hold on.
Thank you.
A23, the PDF file 234, which comes out of the TMT management plan, and this is Appendix B, B9. Before we go into this, I want to ask if there was any permit to grade the road that goes to the proposed site of TMT.
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Oh, it did? Was
It's
it
already
yes?
been answered. Do you recall the answer?
No, I
Okay,
vaguely.
I'll allow the witness to answer this one again then.
As I testified yesterday, for the geotechnical work in 2013, there was a grading permit for the improvements to the road for that, and furthermore, there was a grading permit for additional work having to do with the groundbreaking in 2014.
You remember that?
Okay, thank you. Were there,
Ms. Freitas, do you recall that answer?
now I do, yes.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Were there any archaeologists monitor for this grading site when you guys did the permit?
All work that we do requires the presence of our monitors, including archaeological monitors, and without them, we cannot do any ground disturbing work.
Page 10 of your testimony, under construction area, sentence 1, states during construction, additional areas would temporarily be utilized or disturbed. What does this mean? Page 10 of your testimony?
Yes,
First
so that sentence in section H, I guess, that is, construction areas, the previous page The previous sections describe the work on the accessway, the site, and Hale Pahaku. This section discusses additional areas that are going to be temporarily disturbed. That's what the sentence you read. During construction, additional areas will be temporarily utilized. That means areas other than the TMT site, the accessway, and the work at Hale Pahaku. And those are listed here: port staging area, batch plant staging area, and so on.
So, page 9 of your testimony, this diagram, figure 4. Part of this road will be disturbed. That's what you just said?
No. Page 9, figure 4, shows the route of the electrical conduit that will be installed by Helco, the electric utility company, going along the existing Mauna Kea access road and along a segment which was the previous alignment of the Mauna Kea access road. And none of those are areas on which we will perform any construction.
On your, I don't think you have it in packet C, but it's the TMT management plan, page B3, appendix B, PDF file 228. It has a table here, and it says estimated cut and fill volumes. The TMT Observatory 13N site will have a cut of 34,000 square cubic yards. The access way says it's going to have a 30,000 cubic cut of raw material. Is this correct?
I don't have that document.
What's the page number?
Oh, the page, sorry.
Do you have the PDF number?
I do see table B2, correct? And your question?
The square foot of cubic yards coming out for the access road. Wait, I need my paper back.
Yeah, maybe you can get to the microphone, and then we can ask Mr. Kane to assist you in getting the document back.
Okay, that
So you're
figure,
directing his attention to which?
the TMT management plan B3, that's the doc page. I think the PDF file is 228 on that. And it has a figure B2 on it. And it tells you how much grade are they estimated to take out of the access road, which is 30,000 square cubic feet. Is that correct?
What it says is that on the access way, 30,000 cubic yards of material will be cut and 3,000 cubic yards will be placed on the road in lower areas to achieve the grade. Those are the two numbers on that line.
When I asked you about figure 9, you said you won't touch the access road. You guys are touching the electrical cords and such. Would that take approximately 30 cubic feet of material?
Before you change to another document, sir, can we return the
Yes.
other, thank you, to Ms. Freitas.
Thank you.
Okay. Your question is about two different roads. Your question is mixing two different roads together. So the table that I just returned to you talks about the cut and fill on the access way. That's the road that leads directly to the TMT 13 North site and begins in the area of the SMA. Okay?
Okay.
The diagram on page 9 that you referred to is a different road. That's the road that goes from the Saddle Road Junction, from Hale Pahaku, up to the TMT site, and ends at the SMA. And that's the one in which the electrical conductors will be replaced in the conduit by the utility. Those are two different roads.
Okay.
We will not do any construction on the second road that I'm talking about. It's only the utility company that will replace the conductors under the road. Okay?
So the 30,000 cubic feet is coming out from the SMA side?
The 30,000 cubic yards are along the 3,400-foot alignment of the road from SMA to the 13 North site. That's different from the road in this table in Figure 4 on my testimony, page 9.
Okay, let's talk about that road that you guys are gonna grade, excavate 30,000 cubic feet of raw, cubic yards of raw material, sorry. So by doing this, what is the reason in excavating or grading that road?
The road as it is now is not usable as a day-to-day road for supporting either construction or the operation of an observatory. There are sections that are too narrow. There are sections that are too steep. There are rocks sticking up out of the surface. It's a jeep trail. So it has to be graded so that the grade is appropriate, the width is appropriate, and then it has to be treated so that pavement could be put on it and support and be durable.
Okay, so on Exhibit A23, which is your TMT management plan, page B5, Appendix B, it has a diagram on here, Figure B1 and Figure B2, on how much you're gonna cut this road, 26-inch wide with a 1-inch shoulder, 12-inch lane, which is a double lane. Is that correct?
I don't have that document in front of me. Thank you. And you were referring to the bottom diagram or the top diagram?
Both diagrams.
Okay. And what's your question?
The question is, you're cutting this road to fit a 2-lane area according to B, the bottom diagram.
As I testified yesterday, the first, I believe, 750 feet of the access way are on the cinder cone on the Pu'u, and it's a single-lane road, and the remainder is a 2-lane road. That's on the rock surface that begins when the cinder cone road rejoins the SMA road surface and then goes out on the Jeep Trail to 13 North. That's 2 lanes.
Okay, the question is, in the 2 diagram, you're cutting this road up, correct? And this is where the 30,000 cubic yards is coming from?
That's correct.
And you installing steel plates to cover the SMA utility box as well as the TMT utility box in that road area? I think it's in Figure 1.
You're referring to steel plates.
Yes.
There are not steel plates as part of the structure of that road. I don't see steel plates called out in this diagram. There's one or two places where a steel plate is placed over optical fibers that the SMA array uses to connect their antennas to combine the signals from their antennas. But that's a very small section of the road where there's a steel plate. Generally, there's no steel plates here.
So you're cutting part of that slope down, correct?
We are removing material, and that's called a cut, in order to lower the grade to match up with the areas where we fill with the material by placing material so that there's the appropriate grade.
So what is the cut on that grade to bring the slope down.
The first diagram, in fact, both of these diagrams actually show fill, not cut. It says fill, and then this is also fill. There's no cut in either of these
Okay, let me
diagrams.
turn- Can I have that back?
Sure.
On this next exhibit you got, which is the TMT plan, B6, doc number 276, I think. And you have another figure there. Explain to me that figure.
Well, this is figure B3, shows that on the right side of the figure, the undisturbed elevation of the ground is above the road level. On the left side of the figure, the undisturbed level of the ground is below the road level, and so you make a cut on one side and remove the material to the other side so that you achieve the appropriate level for the grade for the road. So there's a cut on one and a fill on the other side.
Okay. Right now, as the road exists today, isn't it fair to say it's still safe at this point?
It's safe. It's a four-wheel drive road, and it's generally safe.
And by cutting this road, you still need a four-wheel drive car, isn't that correct?
Once the road is completed, any licensed motor vehicle can travel there. It'll be a serviceable road.
So, also, by doing this, wouldn't it help to bring those lowboy trucks or trucks up with all that material consisting of a Magna-to-Walk 2250 crawler crane? Wait. Sorry. Okay.
Question is vague and ambiguous or not.
Yeah, she was holding up something to clarify, but I wonder if you could show what
This
you're
is
holding
for
up
her,
to,
for
Mr.
her. This is stated
Yeah, a
in,
Manitowoc 2250 crane.
this
I
is the
understand.
crane that you folks are putting up there. Is that correct?
That is one of the kinds of cranes we may use, yes.
Ms. Freitas, could you just show that to Mr. Yang? Just show it to him, just so that everyone can see what it is you're showing. And I know you're just showing the spelling of the crane.
It's called a
And it's a Manitowoc,
Manitowoc. That's
Yeah.
how they pronounce it.
M-A-N-I-T-O.
And it's also labeled into your TMT management plan also,
Thank
which
you.
is on page Appendix B, B10. I don't know what's the PDF file, but it states here, a Manitowoc 2250 crane with a 300-ton lift capacity in combination with a 200-ton hydraulic assisting crane or similar will be used to erect the enclosed and the telescope structure. Is
And
that
what
correct?
What are you reading from, please?
The TMT A3, same document, but Appendix B, page B10.
Thank you.
So this crane is what you guys going to use up there. It was already in your plan. Is that correct?
As I testified yesterday, we will use up to 300-ton mobile cranes. You've selected a particular model that we called out in our documents. That's correct.
Correct. And then if you go to the next page, Appendix B, B11, it states here that the ground preparation to handle this load can be achieved by preparing the soil, but this may not be possible and will only be known once the geotechnical studies have been completed. 2, temporary foundations, or 3, crane mats that spread the loads further than the track width. Can you tell me which of those options that you guys have decided on?
I believe this was written before the geotechnical studies were done. The geotechnical studies have been done, and so we know more about the competence of the rock and what the appropriate foundation is to put the cranes on, but I'm afraid I don't know what the engineers have decided to do under those cranes. And in the end, it may be up to the contractor. Once we have the hired contractor and they bring the cranes in, they may decide how they will support those cranes.
So this document was done before geotech. Was there any amendments made to give us updated things that have been done?
This is a plan that describes a future plan with some options. And I'm just not aware of what option we've chosen right now for the foundation under the crane.
Okay, I need that. So although you guys didn't pick an option because of the geotechnical reports and so forth, do you have knowledge of the technical reports?
I have read the geotechnical report back in 2013, late 2013 or early 2014, yes.
So do you have knowledge when this plan came out?
I don't recall the date of that document.
Hold on. But you folks are still using cranes up there to lift this, what was it, 2,000 pounds or tons of building?
We still plan to use cranes like that.
Okay, my question to that, to erect a crane, you have to stabilize 3 of those legs, is that correct?
I'm not an expert in how many legs there are on a Manitowoc and exactly what's done to stabilize them.
Do you have knowledge of that?
I'm not an operating engineer or a structural engineer.
In your testimony, hold on. In your testimony, page 1, second paragraph, I have been with the TMT Corporation since 2004, and since May 2014 with the TIO. I'm responsible for managing the design and the construction of the 30-meter telescope. Is this correct?
That's correct.
So what knowledge of construction do you have?
This is a very large project, and it's not a one-person project. So while I have a lot of knowledge, I rely on a large team, and some of them have knowledge that I don't have.
So relying on a large team, are you the overhead person to approve some of these things with your team?
I am the leader of the team.
So wouldn't you know what your team doing?
When I need to know something, we meet and discuss.
So with this type of project, the magnitude is so big, as a manager, frontline person, the leader of the whole team, shouldn't the leader know a lot of these things? As magnitude as big as this?
Objection, Your Honor. Argumentative.
Sustained.
Okay, let me redirect.
He's answered your question, Ms. Freitas.
So, do you have knowledge of the winds? Did you guys do testing of the wind, the turbulence up on Mauna Kea in the site of Area E?
We did tests from 2003 through 2008 at 13 North.
13 North. And what was your outcome on the wind turbulence measure?
Well, there's a very lengthy report on that, which is public, and
Off your top of the head, what is the
well,
highest?
it's much too complicated for me to do something off the top of my head, but generally, the conclusion was that this was an extremely good site, a world-class site, perhaps the best in the world, for an optical infrared telescope using adaptive optics.
Okay. A crane, according to the national requirements of wind, a crane can hold only 45 miles per hour when the jig is erect up. Did your team take into consideration all this?
Yes, our team is well aware of the weather conditions and environmental conditions under which it's safe to operate a crane, and those conditions under which you have to park the crane and not operate it. And that's part of our procedures, part of our safety plan.
Okay. In the A23, page B9, PDF 234, sorry. Hold on. Hold on. Oh, here it is. That exhibit you have, which is A23, can you explain to me all the con area that has to do with the crane? PDF file 234.
I'm sorry, Your Honor, we're trying to find that document first. I'd like to get the page number.
A23, page number B9, B9, page PDF file 234. It has a list of pro and cons on that crane. Can you please explain to me all the negative parts, which is the con, on that diagram?
Yeah, the document speaks for itself.
Okay, I'll explain it to you.
I can answer. I can answer. This table is a table that describes how the project selected among 3 different types of cranes to be used for the erection of the dome.
Correct. Can you please read all the con area? Do you want me to read it for you? And you can explain it to me one by one?
Well, I can explain it without reading it, if that helps you.
Okay, then give me back that paper so I
Okay.
can follow you. What does it mean required tracks and foundation be installed?
What you're asking about has to do with the gantry crane as one of the options. gantry crane has 2 vertical supports and a horizontal bridge, and so it runs on tracks.
And how wide is this tracks?
I don't know. That's a general statement about gantry cranes in general.
So it also will, which would be in complex as it would have to be circular due to the site restriction. What does that mean?
The enclosure is a circular footprint, and there's an annular region around the enclosure during construction, which is reserved for moving crane around, and the gantry crane would have to move around on tracks in that region. That would be a very large gantry crane, and that's what that's discussing.
So that would be approximately how big?
Well, bigger than the dome, so it would be a very big crane.
Need additional clearance around enclosed, so there is space between granite rail and the dome to transport large pieces.
Correct.
What does that mean?
It just means that in order to use that crane, you need more space than the other cranes that are discussed in the table.
So would you know how far of a reach this crane is?
Depends on the crane and the lifting mechanism. So that's a general comparison of types of cranes. It's not a discussion of a specific model of a crane.
But it's almost multitask with other models as well.
It's what?
Multitasking other things with other models that had a 45 feet range.
As I said, that's a general description of the pros and cons of gantry cranes that are big enough to do the job.
So it says here, this would require a larger flat area around the dome and therefore result in a larger area of impact to the environment.
Correct. Since that crane would require more space, we would have to grade and disturb more of the land on Mauna Kea. Of course, that was not something we wanted to do, so we did not select the gantry crane.
So the Manitowoc 2250 would do that.
A Manitowoc 2250 is not a gantry crane. What that is saying is the basis for us rejecting a gantry crane.
Okay. It says here, serious safety issues with lifting large pieces right next to the crane supports, as these could collide with the crane during windy conditions.
Correct.
So is it you or somebody above you that, wait, let me strike that. Is there a monitor there to measure wind if it's way out of the reach of 45 miles per hour?
During all operations with heavy equipment, we'll be monitoring the weather and deciding on weather shutdowns.
Okay. And who makes that shutdown?
Well, that should be the on-site construction manager.
The mitigation by using widely spread columns. However, this would increase the impact to the environment.
Correct. It would mean that we would need to disturb and grade more of the land on Mauna Kea. As I said before, we don't want to do that, and that's why we rejected that kind of crane.
So the 5 acres where the TMT proposed area going to be built, you would be using a little bit more to accommodate the cranes, the material, and et cetera.
Correct. We would have to enlarge the 5 acres.
So it says over here, additional costs and labor impacts for having an assistant crane with enough boom and capacity to erect and dismantle the tower crane.
Now you're talking about another crane. You just mentioned a tower crane.
Yes, the tower crane.
So you're now on the section of that table, the rightmost column, which is the cons, having to do with a tower crane. Is that correct?
Yes, that's what it says. Are
Right.
you guys using a tower crane?
No, we rejected the tower crane. One of the items in that cons has to do with ice. If you go to downtown Honolulu and look at a skyscraper being built, you will generally see a tower crane. It has a vertical pole
Yes.
and then a bridge that's on the tower crane that moves up and down. If you put a crane like that on Mauna Kea, it will fall down when it collects ice on it, on Mauna Kea. And as it says in that table that you're holding in your hand, you would have to take the whole crane down before the ice formed,
Correct.
or it would collapse. That was easily reason enough to reject a tower crane.
Isn't it fair to say that potential cause of lifting accident on a 300-ton crawler crane, the power of wind is often underestimated or neglected?
I don't know the answer to that.
Thank you.
We will have safety protocols in place that will govern our use of the crawler crane on Mauna Kea in safe weather conditions.
Isn't it also fair to say that the crane and lifting operation there is a significant potential for disaster due to wind loads?
Any use of a large crane is something where you have to be very careful and use the best possible safety practices.
Can the effect on a wind on a crane can be both direct and indirect?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
Okay, let me explain more. Direct effect is a potential to affect the stability and the structural integrity of the Magnetowa 2250 crane, while the indirect effects are wind forces causing the load on the hook to move suddenly.
Okay, both of those are true, yes.
Thank you. So isn't it true to say that it can lead to material falling or people being knocked over, perhaps from a height in this case?
As I said, any use of a large crane has to be done following safety protocols by experienced operating engineers.
Mauna Kea Summit has a cold air and is more tightly packed molecules. And so it is denser, it is dense, and has relatively higher pressure. Is this correct?
Yes,
Isn't it true to say that there are vehicles going up and down the summit? Isn't it true to say that there are vehicles going up and down the summit, but not necessarily in the facility of the proposed TMT area?
during construction, is that?
Rather it's visitors, rather is astronomy people, or even workers. I'm just in general.
In general, during operations or normal times, there will be visitors of all kinds to the TMT observatory, yes.
So the air is a combination of various gas that have a certain density, which is smaller but not zero. Is this correct?
Correct?
So when the wind blows, the molecules of the gas in the air are moved at a certain velocity and gain energy. Is this correct?
Correct.
Give the molecules of gases in the air. Isn't it true that the relationship between wind speed and wind pressure is not always appreciated?
You're talking about humans who don't appreciate the relationship, and that can be true at times.
I'm talking about the molecules of gases.
Yeah, right. But you said-
Given the molecules of gases in the air, isn't it true that the relationship between the wind speed and the wind, between the wind speed and the wind pressure is not always appreciated?
And I was clarifying that not always appreciated means by people exposed to wind. Yes.
If the wind speed doubles, the wind pressure increases 4 times. Is this correct?
Correct.
Does the height plays an important part in the effect of wind on the crane stability?
It can.
Can you please explain that?
If you disturb the extreme end of a crane, you have the lever arm of the wind force on that long part of the crane, and that applies a torque and a force on the base of the crane.
So does the pressure of a structure and that it creates an overturning moment that affects the stability of the Manitowoc 2250 crane?
That can happen.
Isn't it true to say that the height of the crane between the ground and the wind pressure, the greater the risk?
That's correct. But all of these things that you're asking are part of the operating methods and the training of crane operators.
Thank you. Isn't it fair to say if the wind is blowing from the side, this will put a significant side load on the jib for which it is not designated for a risk? So if the wind coming from an opposite direction and not flowing in the same direction, and it sweeps up from the side of the crane, wouldn't it throw the crane off in the stability of the jib?
It will affect the stability of the crane. And again, this is part of the standard operating procedures
Thank you.
to deal with this.
Would it cause it to collapse and the load to fail with potential disastrous consequences? Is this correct?
That is a risk.
In your TMT management plan, it talks about, and I remember you saying this to other cross-examiners, that you guys are bringing in base course to lay the foundation of this TMT foundation. You have to put base course is one of the requirements.
I don't think in my testimony, I don't think I've ever used the word space course.
The TMT management plan states that. Hold on.
So we're looking at which page, please?
Page 2226 on the PDF, Appendix B, page B-3.
Thank you.
PDF file 226, which is the A3 exhibit, page B3 under the appendix. So in this TMT management plan, they're saying they may bring base course from other aggregate?
It said that at the time this was written, but I don't believe that's our plan now. Our plan now is to prepare rock crushing of appropriate size and do it with local material, local meaning on the mountain.
So no base course is coming up then?
Yeah, if anything is brought on to Mauna Kea from outside, as I said yesterday, it will be removed when the observatory is deconstructed, and as I testified yesterday, if any material is brought, it will be used in the paving, and it may be that this is referring to part of the paving.
During the batch plant staging area, none of anything from the bottom of the hill is coming up to use any type of construction material, which has to do with the groundwork.
As I just said, if any material is brought, it will have to do with the paving, and that will be removed later.
So paving, any material come up for the paving,
Correct.
would that be inspected for invasive, things
Yes.
like that?
Yes.
And where is that going to be inspected?
I don't know, but at the lower elevations, below Halipahaku.
And who will be inspecting that?
I don't know, and I testified yesterday that I don't know who the inspectors are.
Maybe not a name, but a title. What, is that a archaeologist? Is that who does that in a title form?
We have an invasive species control plan. We work with the Big Island Invasive Species Committee. Exactly how the inspections are done is something we would work out with Office of Mauna Kea Management, Mauna Kea Support Services. And I don't know the details of who and exactly how those inspections will be done.
Okay. After doing the foundation of the proposed site, there will be pinto bearing used to hold the center of the rotation in the place bear on the soil at the depth of 16 feet below finished floor grade. Is that correct?
That's approximately correct.
Utility tunnels begin on the soil at the depth of 21.5 feet below the finished floor elevation. Is that correct?
That's approximately correct.
The dome foundation will be shadowed continuously spread footings of a various depth of 6 to 10 feet below finished floor grade, depending on the depth of the original rock.
That's about right.
In your professional opinion, will the drilling and the blasting be necessary for all this kind of performance?
There will be no blasting. No explosives will be used at any time in the construction of TMT.
Will there be drilling?
There may be drilling, yes. There was drilling for the geotechnical studies already.
The geotechnical studies, you mentioned they went down 85 to 87 feet and brought out those material to inspect the strength of the rock.
Correct.
How do you measure strength of rocks?
The materials, the cores are taken off to an engineering testing lab, and there are machines that apply forces until they break. There are various tests that are done.
And in that 85 feet of unearthing all that material, were there any living organisms in there?
There was the appropriate monitors present, and I know of no reports of anything like that.
Do you know of any report of water or some sort of wet residue in those rocks?
I don't know. I would be surprised if there wasn't some moisture, but I just don't know.
If an external DIMM/mass telescope is installed, it will need optical cleaning and regular checks of alignment as well as telescope maintenance. Can you describe what is a DIMM/mass?
It's the same instrument that we used on Mauna Kea at 13 North from 2003 to 2008. It's a small telescope that is put on a tower and is used at night to take images and measure the quality of the seeing.
Is there any description of a drain swell around the site?
Could you repeat that?
Is there any description of any drainage swell around the site? Let me get the page. 215.
Just a clarification. Was the question, is there any description of a
Drainage swell around the
swell
site.
or swale?
Swell, sorry, around the site.
Drainage swale, S-W-A-L-E. Is that correct, Ms. Freitas?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't believe the design contains such a thing.
That doesn't have
Oh.
what is that?
So that was contained, that was part of the early plans for the release of heat, waste heat from the observatory. The plan was to go from the mechanical room in the support building where the air conditioning equipment, the chillers are, and the waste heat would go through an underground tunnel and vent in that vent that you're showing in that picture. We no longer have that as part of our plan.
Oh. Okay. So what is replacing the new plan?
We're just going to vent whatever warmth comes out of the air conditioning chillers out the side of the building, like most buildings.
So you're going to cut a
There'll be a grating or a vent in the building.
okay. That's all the questions I have. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Freitas. And you said Mr. Freitas is absent today. All right.
Those are, yeah, right.
Okay, Ms. Case.
Aloha kako. Aloha, Mr. Sanders.
Good morning.
My name is Pua Case, and I'll be asking questions on behalf of the Flores case in Rios, Ohana. I'm going to open with questions that will be referencing the cross-examination from yesterday, just to clarify answers you provided. So I'm going to begin with the total acreage for the TMT project. Yesterday, it was stated that 3 acres was for the accessway, 5 acres for the construction footprint, and then 4 acres for the batch plant, totaling approximately 12 acres. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think the actual total is about 12 and a half acres, yes.
So my question is, does this include all the acreage for every single part of the impact of the TMT project on Mauna Kea? Or are there additional acreage that's not documented in this 12 and a half?
That 12 and a half acres is the acreage in which we will do disturbance of the ground. In other words, construction-related disturbance of the ground.
Thank you. So my question is, it's not, or is it correct to say then that it's not just 12 and a half acres that will be impacted by the totality of the TMT project?
All of the impacts of the TMT project were treated in the HRS 343 final environmental impact statement, which was quite comprehensive, which was approved, and which wasn't legally challenged.
That's not my question. I'm trying to find out because all during, and I'm not being argumentative, I'm just asking a question for clarification. All through this hearing, I've been trying to find out the total amount of acreage pertaining to the TMT project on our sacred mountain, total number of acreage. And I was told earlier that perhaps you would be the one that could supply that answer most accurately. So before I pose the question, I'm looking at areas such as where Mr. Fergerstrom was mentioning oil containers, pipelines. I'm talking about the totality of this TMT project. Do you have a number of acres that would be more accurate than the 12 and a half that's being stated right now?
The 12 and a half acres is the total area of construction disturbance on Mauna Kea. There are underground utilities that will be replaced by the utility company in existing conduits, removing conductors and replacing them with no additional significant ground disturbance. They have to have access to the route, but there's no significant ground disturbance. There's construction at Halepahaku in which 2 transformers are replaced. Again, it's a replacement of an old transformer set for a new transformer set with no additional acreage involved. And our headquarters building in Hilo will be at one of the locations at the existing University of Hawaii Hilo Research Park. It may be in existing buildings that's not settled. And I know of no other construction disturbances or uses of land that we will make use of.
Thank you. So I'm just going to clarify that in summarizing that 12 and a half acres is the disturbance, and I'm going to take out the word ground disturbance. I'm going to say is the disturbance we as the people of Hawaii, the practitioners, Native people, residents, should expect on Mauna Kea. Am I correct to say that?
My testimony was that the 12 and a half acres are the total size of the ground disturbance. I'm the project manager of a construction project, and I'm aware of the extent of the ground disturbance. That's my testimony.
Okay, thank you. So when we're talking about, and I'm sorry to just keep on with this question, but it's really important for me as a teacher when I am speaking to my students or community to say, this is how much disturbance there will be on the Mauna. So I'm just going to try that one more time so that I am accurate when I am providing an answer to a question. So I'm just going to ask, when I'm talking about disturbance, I'm also talking about, say, those containers that will be put somewhere, whether they're underground, whether they're above ground, if they're in addition to the 12 and a half acres. I want to be accurate in providing an answer to my community. So I'm just going to ask that one more time.
Check to the question, vague and ambiguous. It is unclear as to what she means by containers.
I'm talking about what Mr. Fergerstrom was referencing yesterday, and I could ask the court reporter to go back, but I'm not going to. I'm talking about Mr. Fergerstrom had some questions about some oil containers that would hold diesel, and I'm just wondering if that's included in the 12 and a half acres, because it seems to be a part of construction to me. I could be mistaken, but that's those are the types of things I'm talking about, like any additional space for construction or disturbance period on the mountain. I just want to be accurate if 12 and a half acres is the totality of this project. That's what I'm asking. I'm clarifying if it's really been asked and answered, so maybe I haven't been clear enough. So I'm looking at all areas of disturbance, and it's fine if it's 12 and a half. I just want to be sure, so I'm accurate.
So what is your question, if you don't mind?
My question again is the totality of the acreage 12 and a half for disturbance on Mauna Kea for this TMT project? Or is it more acreage than that? And that's what I need to know.
Object to the affirmative question.
Sorry. Object to the question, Ms. States to witness testimony.
All right, so, Ms. Case, I'm getting a little confused myself.
Okay,
So,
all right.
are you asking if the total amount of, is it ground usage or disturbance?
Disturbance for the totality of the TMT project, more than
Is-
12 and a half acres.
Does it include the underground tanks? Is that what you're asking?
Underground, above ground?
No,
I
no,
just-
don't have to
okay.
explain it to
Oh,
me.
sure.
I'm trying to help you with your question.
Okay, thank you.
So just ask the question of the witness so he can understand it and answer you truthfully.
Okay. So I'm going to just ask one more time, and again, I apologize if I'm not clear in the question. My question is, what is the total acreage of the disturbance to Mauna Kea with the TMT project? The total acreage.
The total ground disturbance is 12 and a half acres.
Okay. Is there someone else that knows the total amount of acreage that will be impacted on Mauna Kea with the TMT project? Is there someone else that would go beyond just the ground disturbance, but the totality of the project, that I could ask that? I'm just asking if you know of anyone else that could answer the totality of the acreage.
Your objection, Mr.
Oh, I'm
Ng?
sorry.
Objection. This is argumentative.
I'm not arguing. I'm asking if there's someone else that I could ask this question to.
He answered your question, though. Why do you
No, he didn't answer me to, I'm asking him if there's another person. I don't think I got an answer.
No,
to that.
earlier you asked him a question, he answered it, and now you're asking him if there's someone else who can answer it, but he
Yes.
answered you. So
Right,
that's
he
why-
answered me on the ground disturbance. I'm looking for the totality of disturbance that includes the ground, but could be more than that.
He also answered you previously by explaining that you have some kind of support services, I guess in Hilo and something else.
Yes.
So he answered your question totality. He also answered your question ground disturbance. And now you're asking him if there's somebody else. So
Okay.
I think
You
that-
did answer me with a total amount of acreage and beyond the ground disturbance?
Correct, I did.
Okay. All right. Thank you then. I just want clarification on this one as well. It has been determined that the TMT will be 18 stories high, and we all know that. That's not my question. Please clarify for us again, if you haven't already, how many stories underground will you excavate for this project? How many total stories?
Well, I prefer not to use stories. What we've said is that the height of the observatory above ground is in the 180 to 187 foot range, depending on the orientation of the dome. And your question is about below the ground. The deepest part of the foundation is about 21 or 21 and a half feet. It might change by a little bit, but that's about it.
Okay, and if you had to switch that to stories so that I could see 18 stories above and approximately how many stories below, would you be able to give me a number?
Well, when people say stories, they're kind of talking about 10 foot per story, but different buildings are built in different ways. So I think feet are clearer, but use 10 feet per story.
Okay, thank you. So how many stories would that be?
Well, 180 feet would be about 18 stories, and the 21 feet below ground would be about 2 stories.
Okay, so 2 stories below ground. Thank you for that. Understanding that what you excavate, and please correct me if I'm not accurate, understanding that what you take out from underground, like the pohaku, you call it the material, will be either reused or stored. Is that correct?
Correct.
My question, I'm going to skip ahead to restoration just because it's on my mind. My question is, how can you restore the area with the original material if you've used so much of it? And I'm not sure how much that is. I'm just asking a general question. How can you restore the area if you've used so much of it for, say, the road or whatever it is that you're going to be using? Could you tell me how that would occur?
You can't really restore it perfectly back to the way it was. We, as I described yesterday in my testimony, we've documented the topography with about 1,600 photographs and aerial photography. We will take inventory of the material. Any excess will be stored at the batch plant. And at the time that decommissioning and restoration are done, I believe the people who will be involved with that will do the best job they can to restore the area. But I think when there were reviews in our project by Mauna Kea Management Board and so on, it was acknowledged that you can't do a perfect restoration.
Thank you. I believe that's what we need to know as a traditional people, that it will not be restored perfectly. What do you envision as the head of construction in your capacity? What do you envision? And I'm asking for your expertise, if it is. And what do you envision the restoration to look like when it is decommissioned and no longer there? What would you imagine that to look like on the top of the mountain, on the northern plateau in Area E?
Well, again, it's speculation, but I can assume moving material to try to restore as much as possible either the contours or contours that are generally consistent with the topography.
I'm going to ask you to further clarify that for me, consistent with the topography. What would that mean? I want to ask you if you could provide me with a visual of what I would see there when all is said and done.
Well, as I described, we recorded the visual appearance at about 1,000 places on the site and about 600 plus places at the batch plant, and then did aerial photography, which gives you the topographic, the elevations in the different places. And whoever is responsible for managing that restoration, together with Office of Mauna Kea Management and DLNR and so on, will have to decide to what level the original contours, the shapes, will be restored. There is a discussion in the decommissioning plan and in the other various documents about merely removing the above ground improvements and then grading and covering, or doing excavation and removing underground elements of the observatory and restoring the topography and creating superior habitat for arthropods. Those are a number of the options that are listed in the decommissioning plans, subplan, and those will be discussed at that time. So any answer I give you beyond that is my speculation, but I don't expect to be doing that work myself. That'll be sometime in the future.
So you're saying that what's what would be underground, I just want to clarify, may be left there underground.
Well, I was just repeating what's in the, I believe it's in the decommissioning subplan, that one of the options is to merely remove the improvements above the ground and just take it down to grade. That's that's the minimal option. And then there are others, and I may be paraphrasing it poorly, but, and then there are more demanding options, and those will be decided at that time. That discussion happened because it was realized that sometimes going below ground to remove man-made things that are put into the ground requires excavation and causes disturbance that's more than leaving it in place. And so that's a decision that has to be made at that time. And I think I was present at such a discussion even with Kahukumana. So it's left for the future.
When you say it's left to the future, is it your thought or understanding that as the head of construction, I'm assuming this isn't your first huge job, Mauna Wakea. I'm wondering if that explanation usually suffices for the people who are impacted by the construction. I'm just asking, is that explanation of vague plan to be decided in the future, does that usually suffice for the people who are impacted?
That's a good question. Let me be very clear. I'm not being glib, and I'm not being disrespectful. I don't know what the detailed nature of the restoration will be in the future. And it is a sensitive area. We're all aware of that. I described the measures that I've taken in the design to try to reduce the impact of the observatory. But I do think we've made an honest and earnest attempt to provide those in the future with the ingredients, the materials, the tools, and the options they need to do the best possible job. And I've also admitted that we can't do perfect restoration. So by taking all those photographs, by stockpiling and inventorying the material, by being careful not to bring in off of Mauna Kea material, and providing the documentation, we've tried to give those in the future the chance to do the best job they can. What it is as respectful as we can be, but it's not perfect.
And if I may pause to say that I'm going to be as respectful as I can, and I'm not being argumentative. I'm just going to address that. But this is very dear to me, as you know, so I'm going to do my best as well. And thank you for that. So I'm going to move to the cultural trainings. Again, I'm just going through a number of questions for clarification. In regards to the cultural trainings, which we have spoken about through numerous witnesses here, by the Office of Mauna Kea Management. Is it correct that the length of a training session is approximately an hour, and perhaps reoccurring once a year? I just wanted to clarify that before
That's
I
correct,
go on.
an hour to an hour and a half, that's correct, and we require it annually.
To your understanding, because I believe that you said you participated in at least one training?
I've been participating in it perhaps as much as 8 years, but certainly 6 years every year, and the last time was May of 2016.
Oh, good, then you're more than qualified to answer this question. To your understanding, what is the purpose of the session? Let's say for your first session, what's the purpose of it?
I think the most important thing I got out of the training, and I get it each time, is to realize that I'm in an important and sensitive place and that I have to have respect for it, and I have to think about what I'm doing and the way I'm behaving. I think that to me is the most important thing.
in the training that you attend, and I am a teacher, so I'm thinking about 1 hour training once a year. What information in 1 hour, and I'm looking at just maybe the first time you go there. I know you've been there a number of times, so your knowledge base has broadened, but the first time, what is the knowledge that you walk away with in a 1 hour session?
A sense of how important it is to people, what are the local living things, plants, animals, to be careful about things that may appear to be structures created by people, to be careful about where you're going, to not go where you don't need to go. And there are other more mechanical things, but I really think I come back to my first response to you, which is be respectful and be careful.
So who determines that 1 hour, and you may not know this answer, but you might, who determines that 1 hour is sufficient to cover everything that you might need to know about Mauna Kea in a first orientation? Who determines that?
I don't know. I don't know.
Do you believe, because you have attended more than 6 of them perhaps, do you believe that 1 hour once a year is sufficient for those working on Mauna Kea to be able to be knowledgeable about Mauna Kea?
I don't know about the word knowledgeable, but I know that it's been meaningful for me.
Do you believe 1 hour is sufficient to be culturally sensitive, to be able to interact with cultural practitioners on Mauna Kea? Do you believe 1 hour is sufficient?
I think it's enough to convey a sense of the need to be respectful.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to move on from those sessions on Mauna Kea. I'm going to be asking about the assurances you described to us yesterday regarding decommissioning and reconstructing after the TMT project is over. You used 2 words that I recalled, assurance and commitment. When you say assurance on the decommissioning plan, that you receive an assurance, what does that mean?
Well, the plain English language meaning of the word, I assure you that I will do this. And I think that was a fair word to use. And I described in my testimony yesterday the several specific actions that were taken.
Okay, I'm really looking at how binding is an assurance on decommissioning when someone gives you an assurance that they're going to decommission. How binding is that?
Object to the form of the question to the extent it calls for a legal conclusion.
You're not asking for a legal...
No, I'm not. I'm not asking for he mentioned that it was an assurance. I want to know, to your knowledge, to your understanding, because you are presenting it to us. I'm not looking for a legal explanation. I just want to know how binding, to your knowledge, is an assurance, because you need to assure us, if it were built, that it would be decommissioned. And I want to know how binding is an assurance in your experience.
Well, again, to answer the question, how binding, that's a legal question. But I see these documents signed by very responsible people from reputable institutions like the University of California or the National Institute of National Sciences of the government of Japan, and their signatures are on there. Those are fairly serious documents. Exactly how legally binding, and that's a question for lawyers.
to your knowledge, in your expertise, just to your knowledge, is it a guarantee by law? And I'm not asking for a legal answer. I'm just asking you, in your experience, when there is an assurance of decommissioning, that's a very real concern for us, is that, to your experience, a guarantee for us who live here, whose mauna is sacred? Is that a guarantee by law that it will be decommissioned? And I'm not looking for a legal answer.
But you asked a legal question.
Well, is it guaranteed, in your opinion, in your experience? Is it a guarantee?
I'm uncomfortable.
Not by law.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable answering a question with the word guarantee. It
Me too.
really
I would be
sounds,
too.
It really sounds legal to me, and I'm not a lawyer.
As the head of construction, and I'm asking this question not to be argumentative, I'm asking this question as a descendant of this mauna. Are you saying, as the head of construction, are you guaranteeing me that there will be a decommissioning of this TMT and a reconstruction?
I'm the head of the team responsible for design and construction. You're asking a question about the intentions and worthiness of the owners of the facility. Those are the ones who signed these various documents, so I really can't answer that question.
I understand that, but when you speak about it and you testify to it,
Objection, there's no question asked.
I'm pausing to get the question. When you speak about assurances and you speak about commitments, is it not fair to say that you have then put yourself in a position, perhaps, to have to answer that if I ask that question?
And I think my answer to that is, I think these are serious people who signed those documents and that they understood what they were signing. And in my experience, people like that are worthy of some respect for their signatures. That's my layman's response.
Okay. I'm going to ask you, am I correct that you stated that you assume that the master lease will be extended? Perhaps you might, I can ask for a clarification. Is that correct to say that you assume that the master lease will be extended?
I assume that, and it's my understanding that the members of the TIO Corporation expect to seek an extension of the lease.
What would occur in relation to just your expertise, your responsibility, if the master lease was not extended?
As I testified yesterday, I believe the obligation to engage in the decommissioning would then be apparent.
Has the possibility of not obtaining a new master lease or extension been presented to the corporation partners?
Objection, asked and answered.
Oh,
Do you remember when he answered that yesterday?
I don't remember, but am I, was that, well, let's see, I'll take that back, that I'm going to assume that you have. I'm going to ask you, what has been the response from the partners? Was that covered yesterday? What has been the response of the partners if indeed they have been informed that perhaps a master lease may not be extended? I don't believe that was asked and answered yesterday.
Object to the form of the questions. May call for confidential privileged information.
All right. Would you qualify your question then, to the extent that it's not privileged communication. You may ask your
Sure.
question.
I'm just asking generally if indeed they are aware that the master lease may not be extended. Has there been a public response to that possibility?
I'm not sure the answer to that question.
Okay, then I'm just going to clarify, and I might get an objection here, that they are aware that the master lease may not be extended.
I believe the board is aware that there is a risk.
Are the countries represented aware?
That's
Is
what I
that who
meant.
you mean by the
That's what I
board?
meant. That's
Thank
what I
you
meant.
for that clarification. I'm going to phrase this next question in a little different way. I may have asked it previous, but I think I'm going to ask it again in a different way. Is it your hope or understanding that Native Hawaiians, residents, and local people will be satisfied with the explanations and rationale given about vague agreements and commitments about decommissioning and restoration with no concrete plan, a plan that will be finalized in the future? Is it your hope or understanding that we will be satisfied with that?
Objection, Your Honor. Calls for speculation. How could he possibly know what they're thinking?
I'm just asking.
I'm going to overrule that. I think
Yeah.
you're asking if that's what he hopes would happen.
You know, I really don't have hopes. I think, I'll use this word again, I think I've already described substantial assurances by serious institutions related to decommissioning. And I think I'll just stand with that.
Do you believe that that is sufficient to assure us? I'm just asking, do you believe that that is sufficient?
Object to the form of the question as being vague and ambiguous. Sufficient to whom?
Sufficient.
The decommissioning plan has already been submitted to OMKM, and it was approved by them.
Do you believe that it is sufficient for the Native people, the local people, and the residents who regard the mountain as sacred? Do you believe your explanation will be sufficient?
Objection calls for speculation. Lacks foundation.
I'll move on.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask the following questions again about decommissioning and deconstructing. And again, I'm sure I will get an objection if I'm not asking this properly, but I really want to know this because I love my Mauna. So I'm going to ask this. Is there a possibility or a loophole of some kind that would allow for decommissioning not to take place? Is there a possibility, given your expertise and your experience, that decommissioning might not take place?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm asking.
Everything is possible.
Well, that would be good to have on the record. Is there a possibility in your experience, with your expertise, that decommissioning may not take place.
Same objection.
You're asking him to speculate.
I'm not asking him to speculate. In his experience and with his expertise, might decommissioning not take place?
I don't think my experience is adequate basis for answering that question.
Is it a possibility, given your experience in the field of construction and being the head of this project, that deconstruction might not take place?
Objection calls for speculation.
I'm gonna
Lines
sustain that.
Foundation.
Sustained.
I know that if I were a lawyer, I could reframe this question in 1,000 ways.
And every way you reframe
Right.
it, it's going to be calling for speculation. So it's not because you're not a lawyer. Some questions just can't really be
Okay,
answered.
so I'm going to move on, and everything is a possibility. I believe that might be on the record. Okay, I'm going to move on to questions that I hope have not been asked. Was your employment terminated with the TMT Corporation?
As I've said, I'm an employee of the California Institute of Technology, and my employer has agreed with, at times, TMT Observatory Corporation or TIO more recently to provide my services in return for reimbursement. So you could say my job assignment has been to serve as the project manager for TMT for those two companies, one after another in time, but my employment is with California Institute of Technology.
Did TIO assume all the operational responsibilities of the TMT Corp for the TMT project?
The transition from TMT Observatory Corporation to TIO took some time, because you can't just cut over on 2 minutes. And so when TIO was formed, all of the partners pledged in writing their contributions to TIO, both cash contributions and in-kind contributions. They received credit for their past work that they had performed on their own in the project. And they set about setting up the mechanisms for TIO to take on the employees of TMT Observatory Corporation. That takes some time. So the corporation began in May of 2014, and it took until about October of this year to have things like benefits and insurance and all of the personnel system and all of that in place. And then, instead of purchasing the services of the employees of TMT Observatory Corporation, the employees were moved over into TIO. So in the end, TIO is responsible for all of the construction and all of the operations in the future and employs people, and TMT Observatory Corporation will in time disappear.
So what is the status of the TMT observation or the Observatory Corporation right at this moment?
It's just what I said. The employees have either all or predominantly been transferred to TIO. TMT Observatory Corporation is probably managing the ends of a few contracts and is completing the management of the planning grant with the NSF, which will go through some portion of 2017 or maybe till the end of 2017. But little by little, TMT Observatory Corporation reduces its role. It's part of the transition from one corporation to a successor corporation.
So who is the TMT Observatory Corporation presently governed by?
Its board, which consists of members from its two owners, University of California and California Institute of Technology.
Where is the primary office of TIO located?
In Pasadena.
Is this the same office formerly utilized by TMT?
We've moved. We've had in 13 years 4 different locations, and this past year we moved to another location as we expanded.
How many employees does TIO presently have?
About 75 in the Pasadena location, and then there are others elsewhere, and then there are others working, many others in our partner locations.
How many of these employees were born in Hawaii? Do you have an estimate for that?
A few, but and we once counted it, but I don't remember, but it's a few, a handful. And we have some here in Hilo. I think 5 or 6 here in Hilo, which are not part of the group that I talked about.
I'm going to ask a question about the TIO partners. If one of its existing partners withdrew from the project, would the project still be viable?
That's a decision for the board to make at that time.
So I'm going to ask a few questions about the observatory. Are we correct to say the TMT observatory will be the tallest telescope on Mauna Kea if built?
I believe that's true.
Will the TMT observatory dome be the largest on Mauna Kea if built?
I believe that's true.
Would the TMT observatory be a new visual impact on the Northern Plateau if built?
Yes.
Would the open space characteristics on the Northern Plateau be preserved with the TMT observatory being located there?
Largely, yes.
Could you explain that, please? Could you clarify that for me? Would the open space characteristics on the Northern Plateau be preserved with the TMT observatory being located there? And I'm just going to ask you to expand on your answer.
Yes, and I was careful in using the word largely. As I said,
I got that.
our site is 5 acres. The actual site of the observatory, and of course the enclosure and support building don't fill the entire 5 acres, but let's just go with the 5 acres. And the astronomy precinct is 500 acres, so we are introducing something which is about 1% of the astronomy precinct. So yes, it affects the open space, but we're introducing something that occupies only 1% of the open space. So I think it's fair to say that largely the open space is preserved, but not perfectly.
Would the open space characteristics on the Northern Plateau be improved upon with the TMT observatory being located there?
I don't know if they're improved upon, but for those who want to go there and enjoy other aspects of the area, having the roads somewhat improved is an advantage. Not everyone can travel over open terrain.
Would the TMT observatory be visible from Waimea?
I don't know. All of that visibility, it may be, but all of the visibility is described, I think, rather well in the final environmental impact statement. But I just don't know all the vantage points in my head.
To your understanding or knowledge, would it be visible from the Hawaiian homelands communities in Waimea?
I don't know that. I fall back on the analysis done in the final environmental impact statement on that subject.
So I'm just going to ask a question, not being argumentative, but you are the head of the construction on the top of the Mauna. I'm just asking, are you aware of the places that it will be visible from in the communities, the 14% of the population on an everyday basis? Are you aware of that?
As I testified yesterday, I have read the final environmental impact statement some time ago. I thought that the visual impact analysis was a good and thorough analysis, and it does describe those things. So I'm generally aware, but it's been some time since I've read the analysis.
If the UH is not able to get a new lease beyond 2033, and the TMT observatory was required to be decommissioned by that year. Oh, I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. I'm going to start again. If the TMT is not able to get a new lease beyond 2033, and the TMT observatory in 33, and the TMT observatory is required to do the decommissioning, would it still be feasible to build it on Mauna Kea?
I think, as I've testified before, that risk is something that will be taken into account by our board when they're making the decision on which of the sites to resume construction on, Mauna Kea or the Canary Islands.
With your expertise and experience, would you agree that it would be prudent for TIO to determine the outcome of the proposed new master lease before proceeding with construction of the TMT?
I'm the project manager. I'm not a board member.
In 2015, to your understanding, why did TIO proceed ahead with construction when the initial CDUP was still under legal appeal?
There was no injunction filed, and we had the legal authority to move forward to carry out construction.
And was this initial CDUP invalidated by the Hawaii State Supreme Court?
In December 2nd, 2015, it was.
If DLNR issued a new CDUP for the TMT Observatory, would TIO proceed again with construction while any legal challenges were pending at the State Supreme Court?
I don't know the answer to that question.
What is the urgency for the TMT project to start construction by 2018?
We selected 2018 as the target date for resuming construction so as to allow time for the process in Hawaii. This process is part of that, to go forward, but also to set a limit on how long the project will tolerate a delay. It does increase the cost of the project and delay our accomplishment of the science, and we felt that that April 2018 date was the appropriate, or the board felt that that was an appropriate balance between respectfully allowing and pragmatically allowing for the process to go forward in Hawaii, to investigate an alternate site, and to resume work towards the goals of TMT, which was to accomplish the scientific program of TMT.
I'm going to come back to that line of thought in a little bit, but I'm going to go back. I just found a couple other questions that I would like to clarify from yesterday, so I'm going to ask you to please answer this question from really pertaining to yesterday. We were talking about the top of the mountain, what's underground, and I believe that you mentioned that there would be a 5,000-gallon tank, at least one under the observatory. Am I correct?
There are 3 5,000-gallon tanks underground to the northwest of the support building, one for potable water, one for wastewater, one for chemical waste. There's a 25,000-gallon underground tank for fire suppression, and there's an above-ground tank for diesel fuel for the emergency generators. Those are all described in my testimony.
Right. And I believe we mentioned briefly yesterday, if there is a crack in a tank or it develops a leak, there's a detection system. Am I correct?
In the chemical wastewater tank, there's a double wall and the leak detection equipment, yes.
What would be the protocol if there was a leak found in one of the chemical waste containers?
Yes. So it depends upon the nature of the leak, but presumably immediate action to pump out the contents of the tank and then to do whatever had to be done to repair, and if the ground was impacted in any way, to remove the affected material.
How long might that process take from detection to remedying? How long might that take?
As I testified yesterday, I don't know the answer, but we would do that as quickly as possible.
What might as quickly as possible mean for those of us for us as concerned citizens, Native practitioners, people in general? What would quickly as possible mean?
As quickly as you can to get the resources to do the work and not make it any worse and achieve the cleanup.
I understand that, but how long, could you give me an estimate of how long that might take to clean up, from detection to clean up of a situation like that on the mountain?
Objection, asked and answered.
I'm just looking for an explanation of what quickly as possible might look like, might mean. Is there a possibility that I could get that answer, or?
If you can ask the question.
Okay, I believe I asked that question. What does quickly as possible mean? What might that translate to in time? Is it days? Is it months? So I'm asking just what as quickly as possible might mean for concerned residents.
Objection, Your Honor. You already said it depends on the nature of the leak.
I'm going to let him answer this question, but if you could just keep the question tight.
Okay, thank
you. It would really help.
Trying my best.
So
what does as quickly as possible mean?
Yeah, depending on weather and the nature of the leak, I would assume days.
Days?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. That's all I needed, days. I'm going to ask another question regarding the decommissioning. Can BLNR give permission to TMT to abandon the project in place rather than decommissioning?
I'm not expert enough to answer that.
I'm going to ask another question. Is it likely that TMT will be the end of the line for ground-based telescopes? Because ground-based telescopes, even with adaptive optics, are surpassed by space telescopes, where there is no atmospheric distortion to be overcome.
It's not likely that will happen. There are advantages to ground-based telescopes that I do not believe will be surpassed by space-based telescopes.
Thank you. I'm just going to move here to my computer. It's just going to take me a second here. I'm going to ask you to look at page 10 of your written direct testimony. the TMT Corporation, I'm looking at this statement, the TMT Corporation conducted an extensive worldwide study to evaluate potential locations for the TMT Observatory. Is that correct?
Correct.
In addition to Mauna Kea, where were these other sites located?
There was one in Mexico, San Pedro Martir in Baja, Mexico, and there were 3 in Chile, Cerro Amazones, Cerro Tolanchar, and Cerro Tolar. Yes, Cerro CE, okay, yes, I'll give it to you later.
Why wasn't the Canary Islands on this initial list to be evaluated?
There were other sites that were comparable to the 5 that I listed, Canary Islands, and also sites in Namibia, which were similar to Chile, but we felt that since we had 5 sites that were representative of the different kinds of sites, they were adequate for testing, so we didn't need to test in the Canary Islands or Namibia, okay?
Why is it being evaluated at this time above the others?
Well, we solicited information in February of last year when we felt we needed, or when the board felt they needed to look at a Plan B, and explored a number of sites and exchanged information with the hosts, potential hosts at those sites, and late this past year selected among the options the Canary Islands as the alternate site for TMT.
I'm going to go back to the sites, the prospective sites in Chile. Is it true that one Chilean site was dropped from the list of potential locations for the TMT Observatory because of the mountain sacredness to a particular tribe? And I'm going to spell that tribe, Atacama.
Atacamanians, right. There was a mountain that was early on considered Cerro Kemal, and it was dropped, yes.
Who made the recommendation to drop that site?
I did.
Based upon your evaluation of the site, who determined the mountain to be sacred?
Consultations with the communities of, at that time, 4 mountains in Chile, and we dropped one of them and continue to test the other 3.
And based upon your evaluation of this site, what attributes made this particular mountain sacred to that tribe?
Object to the form of the question. Calls for speculation.
Could you rephrase, please?
Let me ask again, you made the decision to drop that particular mountain because it was sacred to a particular tribe. My question is, in working with this tribe and the community, what were reasons stated that made this mountain sacred to the tribe members?
I don't.
Objection, lacks foundation, calls for speculation.
Can you ask the question in a different way, please?
Okay, give me a second to think about how I can do that. Based on your interaction with the tribe. What was reported to be the reason the mountain was sacred?
I don't recall.
What was disclosed to you by the community about their sacred mountain?
I don't recall, partly because I was not present at the community meeting. It was reported to me As I said to you, there were 4 mountains that we were considering, Cerro Tolar and Cerro Armazones, and there were 2 mountains, Cerro Tolanchar and Cerro Kemal, where the communities did have cultural sensitivity. And based on the discussions, one of those was dropped. The other, Cerro Tolanchar, remained in our program. And we did work with the community, and we did do testing, and we actually had a blessing of our testing site by the Aracamenians in the community. It was called a Ceremonial del Pago. And so we did have, consultation and worked with the community, and they did allow and bless our testing. We later didn't choose that mountain for the site of TMT, but we did work with the community, and we did respectfully carry out the testing and had a relationship with the community.
So why wasn't Mauna Kea dropped from the list due to its sacredness to Native Hawaiians?
I can't speculate and replay history.
Are you aware that the October 2014 groundbreaking was halted on that day and did not take place?
Yes.
Are you aware that there has been a stance, a movement to protect Mauna Kea from further desecration, destruction, and construction before 2014? Were you aware?
I was not aware.
Were you aware that there has been a stance to protect Mauna Kea after 2014 to this present day?
Yes.
Are you aware that over 700 people, reported by the newspapers, were involved in the June 24th, 2015 stance on Mauna Kea?
I don't recall the numbers, so I'm not really aware of those details.
Were you present on June 24th, 2015 on the mountain?
I believe so.
Are you aware that over 10,000 Mauna Kea protectors marched through Waikiki to support the protection of Mauna Kea against the further desecration, destruction, and construction on the mountain?
Objection, calls for speculation.
I'm
Lions
just-
Foundation.
I'm asking him if he's aware.
Yes,
And the
no.
foundation, if I can supply the foundation, I just want to know if he's aware of, I'm not going to say the opposition, but the current situation in Hawaii regarding the building of the TMT. So I'm just asking him if he's aware of the level of that.
Well, that's the foundation that's lacking. You're not able to present evidence about the level of the opposition, protest, or whatever you want to call it.
Okay, so by asking him if he's aware of those numbers, I'm not providing him with a foundation.
Well, it also assumes facts, not an evidence.
Okay. Are you aware that there is an opposition?
Yes.
Thank you. Are you aware of the petition signed by 67,000 people that was presented to Governor Ige?
Objection, calls for speculation, assumes facts, not an evidence.
Sustained.
Lacks foundation.
Were you surprised by the level of opposition to the building of 18 stories on the mountain?
I was surprised by the level of opposition.
What surprised you about it?
I'll just repeat what I just said. I was surprised by the level of opposition. I knew there was some opposition, but the level was higher than I expected.
Just asking for a second, please. What is your understanding as to why this project has generated so much opposition? And I'm just asking for your understanding.
But I think that's speculation. There is opposition. It is what it is.
Well, there's not been an objection, so I'm just asking you the question, and I'm going to ask her to repeat the question, please.
And I didn't use the word speculation in the legal sense, okay? But you are asking me to speculate about what the possible reasons are for the level of opposition.
No, I'm asking you, what is your understanding as to the reason for the opposition? Your understanding.
Right, and I was going to go on and say, and my level of understanding isn't enough to speculate in a responsible way.
When you found that there was a level of opposition beyond what you had anticipated, did you do any research to find out the reasons for the opposition?
I did not do any research. Others involved with TMT have done research.
Could you tell me who they are, who have done that research?
Board members.
Could you tell me their names, please?
All the board members have been involved in looking into it.
Who are those board members that have been involved in?
They're all listed. It's public knowledge.
To your knowledge, have those board members who are all listed in the documentation, have they approached those of us who are in this room today?
I don't know. I don't doubt it, but I don't know.
To your knowledge, what was the outcome of the research of the opposition?
You know, in the end, operationally or pragmatically, the outcome is that we've made it clear that we still prefer Mauna Kea as the site for TMT, and therefore it's worth pursuing a new permit, and that's why we're here in this contested case hearing and working as earnestly as we can to do the best job we can to make the case.
Have you personally ever been involved in a project similar to what is occurring here,
No.
where there are native or local people who are standing to protect and defend their water, their practices, and their sacred places?
No.
Did you state earlier that that may have occurred in Chile, or am I mistaken about that?
I know of no projects in Chile that had real opposition from the local communities. So the answer is no.
What is your plan as the head of construction? What is your plan when a people continue to stand in opposition to the further desecration, destruction, and construction of Mauna Kea?
Objection calls for speculation, lacks foundation.
I'm going to overrule. What is your plan if you have one?
I think it's demonstrated by what we're doing. We are here participating in the process. We are, in fact, in dialogue right now through this formal process. There are other things that can go on, but my involvement, you asked me, is to participate in this process as earnestly as I can.
If you do not begin to build by the end of 2018, do you, as the head of construction, propose that the TMT project not be pursued on Mauna Kea and be moved to the Canary Islands?
That's up to the board. My role is to present the board with the opportunity from the project standpoint, engineering, technical, planning, and so on, to build in either location, and then the board will choose where to build.
What will your recommendation be?
I won't make a recommendation, and I mean that honestly. I won't make a recommendation. My job is to provide two viable options from an engineering, technical, construction, so on, to the board, and then for them to decide.
Are you in direct communication with the ad hoc committee? I'm from the Office of Hawaiian Affairs.
No.
Okay. I just have a few more questions, and they pertain to really the Canary Islands as a second proposed site for the TMT. And I'm speaking in honor of the people of those places. Have you had any initial opposition by the people there? I'm talking about the native people who may regard that mountain, if it's on a mountain, as sacred. Have you had any initial opposition by the people there for their island home to be selected as a possible TMT site?
Objection, immaterial and not relevant.
Why is this material? Why is this important?
Spiritually speaking, physically speaking, we as a Native people are standing here to safeguard our mountain. And it matters that an observatory that would have gone up on our mountain might be moved to the homeland of another people who might be in opposition to this project as well. So I'm asking the question, has there been any initial opposition to the TMT being moved to the homeland of another people who might be impacted the same way and have to stand as we are standing here?
Sustain the objection.
Okay. To your understanding, do the people of the Canary Islands believe that their mountains are sacred?
Objection.
I'm just asking him if he has understanding, because you have already gone there, you meaning the corporation. I'm asking, do you have understanding at this time that their mountains are sacred.
Objection,
I'm just-
irrelevant and not material, lacks foundation, calls for speculation.
He's making this essentially the same objection.
I know that.
So,
And I think I'm going to end there by asking one last question. Would it not be wise to find out if the people of the Canary Islands believe that their mountain is as sacred as our mountain is to us?
Objection, not relevant, immaterial, calls for speculation, lacks foundation.
I
I'm gonna-
stand on that.
thank you, Mrs. Case. I'm going to sustain the objection.
Thank you. It was really more of an advisement than a question, so mahalo.
Okay, I didn't want to interrupt the cross-examinations this morning, so we zipped past our normal break. It is 11:30, and I'd like to break until 1 o'clock and then resume cross-examination of this witness. Okay, we'll stand, oh, before we do that, let me complete the roll call. I found my list. So,
Before we leave that point, Your Honor, I just want to clarify if there are any other cross-examiners. Otherwise, I'd like to have Dr. Sanders excused.
okay,
Well, I understand she was the last cross-examiner by request.
well, that's a good question because although he's not looking at us, Mr. Kamara, is it your intention to have cross-examination of this witness? All right, thank you, and he is the last one. I think everyone had their turn, so you can excuse the witness. I will excuse the witness. We're going to complete the roll call from this morning. I noticed Mr. Kamara appear at 9:44. Mr. Louis Kwan. Mr. Kanuha, I'm so sorry. Sorry. Mr. Kanuha is here, and he appeared at 9:44. Mr. Louis Kwan appeared at 9:20, about there? Was he introduced, you were introduced earlier?
I was, Mrs. Sanderson made an appearance for both of us. I was here from the beginning.
I apologize, thank you. So Joseph Kamara is not present. Stephanie Tabata is not present. Kalikule Hua Kanaele, not present. Glenn Keela, not present. Brannon Kealoha, not present. And Mr. Fergerstrom, did you confirm that you received C1 through C39?
I have not yet confirmed that, but I can tell you that all the documents are not present just by the volume of documents. I have, I believe, what they have in their index, but not the reference materials that they referred to. They're a separate party. They need to provide separate information.
Did you get C1 through C39?
Yes.
You did confirm that you received that?
I did not confirm it. I can tell by the volume that it's only partial.
Okay, could you please look it over perhaps during the lunch recess? We'll have a little extra time.
If I have a bit of time, yes. I
Okay,
will.
so by 1 o'clock, I'd like to make sure to confirm what you have.
Okay, I'll try to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Pisciotta, something else? I'm sorry. Mr. Fergerstrom, something else?
Yes, because I haven't been able to go through the documents yet, I reserve the right to recall this witness.
Well,
I have to be able to go through the material.
I asked you to do
Due
that.
course and due time.
I asked you to do that this morning.
But you asked me to do that while I'm in the middle of a hearing. When did I have a time to do that?
You were done with your cross-examination yesterday.
I am paying attention to the hearing.
Not always.
Oh, and you can determine that?
Yes, sir, when you're not present in the room.
Oh, when I use the bathroom, is that what you're referring to?
The multiple times that you've been absent from the room. I'm not
Ms.
trying
Amano,
to...
it's not your place to tell me what I hear. Thank you.
Ms. Pisciotta?
Yeah, I just wanted to say Uncle Kaliko is still working. He did file a motion. He'll be working till the 14th, but he's going to try if he can, to come in the afternoon.
The alternative would be that he might be able to get some questions to you folks so you can ask them for him. But, because I see it's happening all the time. That's
Well,
one
people
way
have-
to do it.
I'm just saying
No, I'm
he's
just
working.
I get that, I hear that.
So I'm just repeating it because you were looking for him and he wasn't here. So I just wanted to say he's working till the 14th, and he will try to come in the afternoons. That's what he wanted me to communicate to you. He's going to try to come every afternoon if he can, but he's working every day in the morning.
Thank you. Ms. Aluli? Yes.
Your Honor, I just want to make a request if we could just, I mean, if Mr. Sanders is hot to trot and going to jump in his car and walk away, I'm assuming he's going to avail himself of the opportunity to be present this afternoon. Would it be all right if we went and got questions from Mr. Kanaele, if we can get them from him?
Why does he have to be present this afternoon?
Well, he doesn't need to be present. I would like to request that we be afforded the opportunity to poll the two petitioners who are not here by virtue of work. One is Mr. Kanaele, and the other is Mr. Flores, who is having to go to a work-related training on another island. And if we could maybe get questions and ask his questions following the recess.
Mr. Flores, I thought he and Ms. Case were representing the case Flores Ohana, and so they were taking turns. And
They're taking turns.
So
Then we
honestly,
don't need.
it's really.
I was just hoping that we could, at least for the folks, since Mr. Kanuha is not prepared to ask questions and declined to ask any questions.
So there are no further cross-examiners?
I guess not, that are not here today.
Maybe I should wrap this up by asking Mr. Ng if you intend to redirect this witness.
I do not.
All right. I'm going to excuse Dr. Sanders. Thank you. Yes. You can make a motion. You can put it in writing, please. You'll need to put your reasons. So please, during the recess, I am asking for the second time to review the documents that were given to you and to let Mr. Shinyama know what's missing, if there is anything missing. I'm just interested in getting everything that you need.
There's all the reference materials that I'm referring to.
You haven't even looked at it. We're in recess.
That's a real good way to do that. Very intelligent.
I'm addressing you, Mr. Shinyama. Has the matter of Mr. Fergerstrom's exhibits been clarified to you?
No, it has not. He has not approached me today, this afternoon.
Mr. Fergerstrom?
Yes, Ms. Amano?
Have you reviewed the packet that was given to you?
Yes, I have.
And are all the exhibits there?
The exhibits that are indexed, yes.
C1 through C39?
Yes, but that's not all the exhibits that are supposed to be there,
And how would you know that?
because they make very many references to that which is in the files of the University of Hawaii. As a separate party, they'll have to provide me with separate materials. I said I've reviewed what they provided me. It has the 39 pieces that are indexed, bought all the references that they make to the documents, and with their witnesses are not provided. They're a separate party.
Did you talk to Mr. Shinyama during the noon recess?
No,
Didn't I ask you to do that?
no. You asked me to review the documents.
And I asked you to take it up with Mr. Shinyama during the noon recess.
I must have missed that. That was probably when you walked off on me.
I beg your pardon?
That's when you walked off on me, I believe.
No, I'm pretty sure I said that before I walked off.
No. Okay, well, I must have
We're
missed that.
off the record then. And by the way, you made a representation to me this morning
Yes.
that you were here the entire time during the cross-examination of Dr. Sanders.
I don't
this
believe I
morning.
made that statement.
Perhaps I misunderstood then.
Perhaps you
Would
did.
you like to clarify
What would you like me to clarify?
your statement
Of what?
about why you did not look at the attachments or the packet that was given to you this morning, like I asked you to?
Excuse me, like you asked me to?
I did.
Am I not supposed to be paying attention to this hearing?
Well, if you
Due
need
time and due course.
Excuse me, Mr. Fergerstrom, but
Yes.
if you need to, I'm prepared to put on witnesses about what you were doing this morning during the time of the
and
examination of
what is that
Dr.
supposed to prove?
Sanders.
What is
Well,
that supposed
that
to prove?
perhaps you had time to do that, and that perhaps you may have misspoke, and maybe you
No,
might want to
perhaps
reconsider.
you have misspoke. I have not misspoken at all.
Okay,
And so, again, for the record, I have the documents today indexed, but I have none of the reference materials that they refer to in their documents for the direct witness testimony. They are a separate party, like you made so very clear to us, that they're a separate party than the University of Hawaii, and therefore they provide their own documentation. Thank you.
is Chandell Asuncion here? Please have her come forward.
She's not a party to this case.
Good morning. Is your name Chandell Asuncion?
Yes, it is.
Thank you. Could you spell your name for our record?
Why?
I'm asking you to,
Why?
because I would like to have the correct spelling of your name.
Why? I'm not a party here, so you called me to your mic. Explain.
I'm going to put you under oath. I need to ask you questions about...
I'm not asking to be under oath. Please explain why you called me here.
You've been here all day?
I have been.
You know Harry Fergerstrom?
Again, explain why you're asking
Do
me
you
these
know him?
questions. I'm not answering you until you tell me why I'm here.
Okay, very good. So you refuse to answer?
Explain to me why I'm here,
You
and
are
I will
refusing to
tell
answer.
you
Is that true or not?
You're going to explain to me why I'm here.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Is Luana Neff here?
Your Honor, she just left.
Thank you, Mrs. Holy. Then I'm going to ask Security Officer Lino Kamakao.
Ms. Holy is not finished.
Dr. Amano,
Excuse me?
for the record, I just like to state that on my father's side, she and I are both related.
Oh, it's okay. Don't worry about that. She didn't do anything wrong. Thank you. Don't worry. Lino? State your name and spell it for the record.
Lino M. Kamakao. First name Lino, last name Kamakau.
What is your position here?
Branch Chief for Conservation Enforcement under DLNR.
And for this contested case hearing, you've been here all day?
Yes, I have.
From what time?
About 10 to 9 to present.
Do you know Harry Fergerstrom?
Yes, I do.
Can you tell me, during the cross-examination of Dr. Nelson, what you may have observed Harry Fergerstrom doing outside this building?
I know one time for sure he was out there on his cell phone. I know
Thank
that
you.
for sure. He may have been there numerous times, but I know one for sure.
All right, thank you. I don't have any other questions. Mr. Fergerstrom, you have any questions of Mr. Kamakao?
No, exactly.
Okay, very good.
So what does that have to do with me?
I guess you weren't too busy to go outside and check your cell phone rather than checking the records like I asked you to.
Excuse me, who are you talking to? And what authority are you talking to me in that tone of voice?
I'm the hearings officer.
And what's that mean? You're quasi-judicial hearings officer.
You know what, Mr. Fergerstrom, here's the thing. I've operated in good faith, and I expect
you?
everyone
Have you?
everyone to
Have
make
you?
representations to me accurately, as
Then
I
I
have
have.
done to others.
And don't put
So,
words in my mouth.
No problem.
Okay.
Because hereafter, we're going to implement a new rule.
Good.
We're going to have
It's
a
called
sign out
It's called
for
offer of
parties and
proof.
councils
Offer
during
of
the
proof.
time we are in the hearing. And hereafter, on the floor, only parties and councils. Because that way, our security will be able to take note of when somebody goes out and comes in. No problem.
I'd like to make some objections, starting with the fact that because we go outside, if you ask about me, I was outside.
I'm not asking about you.
I get that, but I'm going to
This is not about you, Ms. Pisciotta.
I
It's about a
understand.
misrepresentation made to me. And every representation made to me, I expect to be accurate.
I want to object to your ruling that we have to sign in and out.
That's fine.
Because there are times when we do have to be outside. We can't talk on the phone in
That's
here, and we
right.
have business to attend to. So I'd like to mark my objection to you making a sign in and out.
So noted.
Okay, and also, I do take exception to the way you are talking to him and treating him, because I can certainly say that he wasn't making any misrepresentation. I was listening to that part. And as far as I know, is there anything wrong with the fact that we aren't always in this hearing 24/7?
No, it's not, and I have not made it an issue.
Okay, but you're saying you're making rules that are going
That's
to be
correct.
enforced on us. Okay, well, I'm filing my objection.
Thank you. Mr. Ching?
I also would like to object. I don't believe that we have been consulted, and we haven't consented to any change of rules. Thank you.
I would also like to object to the conduct and the treatment of Mr. Fergerstrom. My daughter is in the room. She's 13 years old, and this is inappropriate behavior for her to witness.
My name's Deborah Ward, and if those of us who need to use the restroom use the restroom,
No
which
problem.
is what Mr. Fergerstrom explained to you, then it is not necessary to wait for a break. And the other
True.
thing is that I think that you are not taking the time to hear what Mr. Fergerstrom is saying, and this is in all due respect. I understand that you're taking time, but I believe that Mr. Fergerstrom is trying to make a point that you're not listening to, and I would appreciate it if you could give him the time to explain what he's saying. And I thank you.
Thank you.
Cindy Freitas, I also object. I don't think that is appropriate for signing in and signing out. However it unfolded this morning, it should have been given time to inhale all these documents as well, because the documents are thrown to us, boom, 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 boom. And sometimes we take time, we gotta take time to see that, and I understand your point. And I understand the time we had sacrificed, all of us, to be in this room so we can hear each and every one of us collectively in honor, in truth, and so forth. So sometimes we do need that time as
I
well.
know.
And I know you need that time too, but we need to come to some consensus. Thank you.
Your Honor, I'd just like to make a couple of observations. One is the struggle by those who do not have access to the electronics that most of us have to get documents has been well documented in this proceeding for quite some time and has led to contention and misunderstanding and all of that. I think this is one of those cases where people are being asked to say that they've gotten documents and maybe they got them, maybe they didn't. We don't know what's what because it's been a very confusing process. Secondly, I just find it totally inappropriate to have law enforcement, armed law enforcement, in this proceeding, being called up to testify, being told to discipline people, being called to check in people, check out people. I don't understand that part of this at all.
My turn?
I just want to say something. I've been practicing law for over 40 years. I understand how difficult it is to administer a proceeding, because sometimes folks are coming in and they're coming straight from where folks are when they're arrested, and they're in chains, and we've got guys with guns on and bailiffs who come because folks come to courthouses loaded for bear, and they get through the screening process. I have to go through a scanner every day that I go to work down there. And so there is a milieu that this comes from. And I just want to say, Judge, I want to respect the order of things, and it is it's hard because we don't get to talk to
Ms.
guys in
Aluli,
the front.
I hear you.
I'm hearing. I apologize.
I appreciate your understanding, but I'm focused on just one thing. All I was trying to do was make sure he got the documents. That's all. That's where this started. That's where it's going to end. But then there were other issues that popped up. And now I have no record of who goes and comes, which I normally would have. But I didn't do that from the beginning because I thought we could operate in good faith. People could have the freedom. We have a lot of extra space. I've made no issues about people coming up with questions, even after their turn at cross-examination has come and gone. I've made no issues about folks may be missing one day of testimony, coming the next time if they're here and the witness is here, no problem. I've given a lot of leniency, but now I don't have a record because I've trusted. And so we need to fix that. And so I'm going to stand by this. You can come and go as you please. I'm not stopping you. Just be accountable. If you're gone, you're gone. You're here, not a problem. But during the hearing, I need to have a record. I didn't make one all of this time. We've had almost 30 days of hearing, 21 here, contested case. We had 3 days of hearing on motions. We had hearing on the motions to participate as parties. I didn't make any issues on this. It just came up today. So I'm not going to change my mind.
About the signing in and signing out.
You're welcome to go and come. I just need some kind of record. I don't have it when I need it.
Do I have my chance to rebut?
She's got the mic as soon as she's done.
Well, I understand. I mean, thank you, Your Honor. And I just want to say that I get why we have to do this, but it's been drummed in, and maybe I've just been completely colonized for the last 40 plus years. I get it. And
for security, I'm not worried about me. If one of you gets hurt, I'm not going to be, I'm going to kick myself.
Right. And
there's security here for all of us.
Because we don't have the scanners that we have in the...
We have nothing.
And the courthouses. I mean, we go through, take your belt off. Every lawyer, you want to sit there and go, I've been doing this for how many years? You know who I am. I got to disrobe every morning. I get it. So that's part of why this is all going down, and it's because we don't have the scanners.
So it's that, plus I feel responsible for everyone. Whether you're coming to observe, I don't care which side you're on. I don't want anyone to get hurt. Everyone has a lot of passion on every side. It's just a precaution, and I feel responsible. So that's the reason for the security.
Thank you.
It's up to you.
So I apologize for all this confusion. I didn't start it, okay? You asked me a simple question, had I had the time to review the documents. I've taken the time to review the documents. I have all that is indexed. What I don't have is all that they reference, which is part of being a party. You cannot tell me, because I cannot cross-examine their witnesses, like you've done. You've confined us to the written direct testimonies. And so if they have documentation I'm supposed to have, then I have to have it. This has been spelled out from the day one. I told you I cannot rely on my electronics. I live off the grid. I pay umpteen dollars for data. I'm lucky I have free data here. Otherwise, I wouldn't even be able to catch up. I've explained to you what the rule says about being on mail. With a 3-day extension, you've overridden that every single time I've brought it up. I've bought you weeks and weeks of documentation by the day, by the hour I receive it. Took no accounting to that. You made minute order after minute order before I even got the document. And you just kept saying, file a motion. File a motion, I do. Do you ever answer them? No. You have never answered my documents ever, with an explanation of why you refer to it that way, like the participation of TIO and Pueo. You have never explained how that came to be and why you started these proceedings in Honolulu, when the law says you just start it on the island of which is impacted. That's part of the rules. So it's part of the rules that if you're a separate party, you provide separate documentation. Thank you.
Mr. Ng?
Thank you, Judge. I just want to note a couple things for the record. We did serve Mr. Fergerstrom by mail, and that was indicated in our certificate of service. We checked with our staff. They did recall putting it in the mail to Mr. Fergerstrom. We don't know why he didn't receive it. However, that was done on September 24th. Okay? He's had better part of 3 months to determine whether or not he had our documents. Okay? Other people have been more diligent and not sat on their hands during the course of the proceeding. At the request of Mrs. Freitas, we did provide her a USB drive. She gave us a drive. We loaded all of our documents on that drive and provided it to her, I want to say, a month ago, as a courtesy. Had we been informed that he did not have the documents, we would have made an effort. But he waited until the witness was on the stand and then tried to raise it at that point. And even when he raised it, he didn't even know whether he had the documents or not, because we had filed a certificate of service indicating that he had been served by mail. So I think it's very unfortunate, but it's unfair to the rest of us for him to go through these outbursts during the course of the proceeding, okay, when he is at least partially at fault. We could have corrected this months ago, but there was no request. So he should know what he has and doesn't have. There are tons of ways to do it. Even when he cross-examined Mr. Rechtman, he had obtained a copy, electronic copy, from one of the other interveners in this proceeding. He had that opportunity as well. He chose not to exercise it. Okay, so he's brought this upon himself. Thank you.
As I spent the entire Christmas vacation going over my documents. I already told you I did not receive them, and if Mr. Ng likes to reply that he did, give me an offer of proof. Because their certificate does not say anything about the penalties of perjury. Offer of proof.
Security. Use that entrance only for in and out. All parties, councils sign out and in. And I print name, signature, I want the date. Thank you.
Can't hear.
Ms. Pisciotta?
I want to say two things. One is, it's real simple for Mr. Ng to know if Mr. Fergerstrom received the documents by simply using the normal procedure in the mailing to have a return receipt. In other words, that he would have to sign for it. And number two is, I have no problem having all of the officers here. I hear what you're saying, and I appreciate that. I appreciate the officers. We're not in contest with the officers. But what I want to know, because this is giving me the feeling, and I want to know on the record, are we in a criminal proceeding here?
Of course not.
Okay, this is a civil proceeding, correct?
It's a contested case hearing.
Exactly. So that is why I am objecting to having to sign in and sign out, and to be treated like we're in a criminal proceeding when we are not. This is a civil proceeding.
You're not in a criminal proceeding. That is only for my record, that's all. Because I'm not going to be able to keep track. And I don't want somebody making a representation to me that I cannot go back to a record and look at.
Okay.
That's what I have to do.
I still want to.
Apparently, the witnesses are unwilling to talk. I don't want to go through all these contempt proceedings and everything else. We don't need to do that. But I'm trying to make it as simple as possible. You're welcome to come and go. It's not an issue.
Yeah, I disagree with your representation there.
Why is that?
Because I do feel it is. I mean, we're coming and going. We're in good faith, trying to be here as much as possible. But the truth of the matter is, when we're here every day, we are trying to hear and participate in this hearing, and it doesn't actually afford him the time to review it and make sure it's all okay. He actually has to probably work with one of us so that he can review and make sure it's all right.
That isn't the point, Ms. Pisciotta. It isn't.
Well,
if you represent to me, well, listen, I was here all morning. How am I going to know you were or weren't? The only way I can tell is by having a record. That's all I can do.
Okay, well, I still feel it's overly litigious. Okay, the other point is, the problem that we keep running into, Your Honor, is when the witnesses are up there and we're asking them questions on the documents, which we ourselves, as Mauna Kea and Idaho, have accepted university's documents, okay? The problem is they're a separate party, and when their witnesses come up, can they swear to the accuracy of those documents? Because they're relying on university documents, okay? So if they're relying on university documents, are their witnesses going to be able to testify to the truth of those documents? And so therein is where the question comes in. Are they, you know?
I'm going to ask you to consult with Ms. Aluli about that. I think there's...
Why would I consult with Ms. Aluli? She's not my lawyer.
I think you need some legal advice.
I'm just...
Okay, all right, look.
I'm
Here's
just
the thing.
asking a
You've
simple
been
question.
referring to the university's exhibits as well.
Yes.
And I suspect that maybe some of your witnesses might refer to the university's exhibits as well.
Right.
Are they going to be able to attest to the truth and veracity of those exhibits? No, you're not expected to.
Yes, but we're taking the chance that we know what is in them and that we're willing to accept that. But on the other hand, TIO is a separate party, are they not?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, then
they came in when the others came in, not you.
Then they need to have their witnesses attest to the veracity of the university's documents.
That makes no
Somehow.
sense. I think you need to talk to Ms. Aluli, please.
I'm not going to talk to
Okay, then don't talk to her. That's fine. I'm done with it.
Okay.
I'm done with it.
What is your ruling, though? I mean, what are you saying? That
there's nothing wrong with the procedure, is what I'm saying.
Well, like I said, they're a different party from the university. So if they're going to rely on another party's exhibits, we need them to say that they're willing to accept the exhibits as are, and they're going to move them in as their own exhibits. That's all I'm saying.
I've already responded.
Okay.
Mr. Ching.
Now that you've enunciated your new rule, I will again object to it because I haven't been consulted and I haven't consented. I haven't been consulted. I haven't been excuse me. I haven't been consulted. I haven't consented. I will not be signing it out. Thank you.
And so the same back to you, Ms. Amano. You made a suggestion on record that I had somehow deceived you. I would like you to give me an offer of proof.
Your next witness, Mr. Ng.
Thank you, Judge. We recall Dr. Robert Rechtman. He has been cross-examined previously, but there were some cross-examiners that did not have an opportunity to conduct cross-examination.
Good afternoon. You are Robert Rechtman. I'm going to give you the oath again. Please raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in the matters before this tribunal shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. And before I continue, I'm going to ask every non-party or non-lawyer counsel to the party to step back and sit in the gallery, not in the front. It's going to give us a little bit better control over the proceedings, please. Yes. Oh, you stay, Mrs. Holy. You comfortable there, right? Mrs. Holy? You're comfortable there? I am. All right. Thank you. There's a table back there. Yes. She can sit back there and help you. We'll speak loudly. I believe we left off with Ms. Kihoi. And Ms. Kihoi, I do see your daughter there. I know she's a minor. I'm allowing her to stay. So, who's after Ms. Kihoi? Mr. Kanuha, you were not here the other day, but you are here now. Would you care to cross? All right. Mr. Ashita?
No questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Sinkin?
Good afternoon, Bob.
Good afternoon.
Lanny Sinkin here for the Temple of Lono. I want to focus for a minute on the distinction that is made between sites that are 50 years or older and sites that are younger than 50 years, if I have that dividing line correctly.
Okay.
Okay. That distinction is an archaeological distinction, is it not? It's a distinction made by archaeologists. Is that correct?
It's a distinction made in the historic preservation community. So it applies to all sites, could be buildings, other things that are older.
Mr. Rechtman, I'm going to ask you to speak clearly and loudly into the microphone.
It applies to all man-made objects that could be archaeological sites or historic buildings. So there's generally a 50-year cutoff in the rules and regulations about what's historic and what's not.
So that distinction is used by state of Hawaii agencies for purposes of regulation and rules?
Yes, generally, yes.
Do practitioners of the traditional Hawaiian faith make a distinction between sites that are 50 years or older and sites that are younger than 50 years?
I don't know.
To your knowledge, is there anything in the traditional religious practices of Native Hawaiians that would distinguish one site from another based on how long the site has been in place?
I don't know.
In your earlier testimony, you made a very simple statement that I thought was actually very profound. You said, "We don't know anything about what we don't see." You remember saying that?
I remember something to that effect, yes.
Would it be fair to say that archaeologists cannot see what they are not trained to see?
I'm not sure that would be fair to say.
Okay, why would you differ?
I don't know that anywhere in my training involved what I should and shouldn't see.
No, what you can and cannot see. For example, let me give you an example. You as a trained archaeologist going up on the Mauna might see a rock stood upright. Because of your training as an archaeologist, you might acknowledge that that's perhaps a sacred site. But if you had not had that training, an upright rock wouldn't mean anything to you. Would you agree with that distinction?
I would agree with that distinction.
Okay. Would it also be fair to say that an archaeologist cannot see a site that does not change the landscape from what it was prior to the creation of the site?
If I'm understanding what you're saying, it would be fair to say that if there was no physical manifestation of something that you could not perceive by the normal senses, then we might not see it.
Right. So just to give you a hypothetical, let's say on the solstice that a kahuna of the Temple of Lono went up on the Mauna and placed certain rocks in certain positions for a ceremony. But the placement of those rocks was not in any way visible to the naked eye. It was just a rock that had been moved, but you wouldn't know it had been moved. You would have no way of knowing that that site had been used for a sacred ceremony, would you?
Objection. Incomplete hypothetical, assumes facts not in evidence.
I think I'm going to allow this question. Thank you. If you can answer, please.
If I were on the mountain and I observed rocks that had been moved, and I could tell that they had been moved, then I would probably make a recording, physical, map, whatever, noting that rocks have been moved around. So if it were obvious, and in many cases, especially on a mountain like that, where the rocks all have a certain patina color, and if you move it, you're not necessarily going to put it back down the exact same way it was, then you can see that rocks have been moved, generally speaking.
Okay. If a natural formation on the mountain is treated as a sacred site, you would not know that fact unless you actually saw someone engaging in a ceremony or having left an offering at that natural formation, would you?
Objection. Incomplete hypothetical, calls for speculation, assumes fact not in evidence, and lacks foundation.
Mr. Sinkin?
Well, there's been discussion previously of archaeological sites that are natural formations. I'm distinguishing what an archaeologist can know about a natural formation. Does it require that there be some manifestation of a sacred practice on that natural formation? In other words, could there be a natural formation for which there is a sacred practice, but because no physical offerings are left or no identification of bracelets or anything of the sort is left at that natural formation, to the archaeologist, it's just a natural formation?
So, Mr. Ng?
Yes, what he left out was that the archaeologist is not relying just on what he sees and what he alone has observed in the past. He's also relying, as Mr. Rechtman has testified previously, on studies previously done by others. And so there's a wealth of knowledge that's not included in this hypothetical.
Could you modify your question a bit?
That's fair enough. I guess the modification would be assuming you didn't have any prior knowledge of this natural formation, and you went up on the mountain and you looked at a natural formation. The only way you would know whether that natural formation was in fact a sacred site would be if someone had left an offering or otherwise identified that site by some activity. Would that be a fair statement?
Mr. Ng?
Yes.
How about the
Yes, with an addition that if I had made inquiries into the community of practitioners and asked, if there were any sacred sites up there, and that information was shared.
Right. I was prefacing the question with the completion, I hoped, of the idea that you didn't know anything before you got up there. Right. So if the ceremony that was conducted up there was the burial of a pico on a site where the family doing the burial would be the only one knowing that it was there, and that over time that eroded that burial, and so when the archaeologist came upon it, there would be no evidence to know that there was in fact a sacred site there for the burial. Would that be a fair statement?
If the only physical manifestation of that site were the pico that was left behind, and it disintegrated and was no longer there, and there was no other physical manifestations of the site, without oral information, I would not know about it.
Unless the family told you about it or something of that sort.
Correct.
Right. You were asked about a bracelet that was left at a site as to whether that bracelet was a spiritual offering, and you replied that you did not know the ethnicity of the person who placed the bracelet, so you could not determine whether the bracelet was an offering. Do you remember that exchange?
Yes.
Okay. Is it your position that only Native Hawaiians can practice the traditional faith of the Hawaiian people?
No, I believe anyone can practice, but I believe without getting, I'm not an attorney, and I'm not going to speak law,
Not
but
asking
I
for a
believe,
legal opinion.
but I believe, that the rights are protected for those people who are of Native Hawaiian ancestry.
Oh, I understand that. That's a separate thing from what I'm asking about. What I'm asking about is the fact that you said you did not know the ethnicity of the person that placed the bracelet there, and that ethnicity would tell you something about the spiritual nature of the bracelet. So my question is, does only one ethnicity practice the Native Hawaiian faith? And if so, what is that ethnicity?
I don't know who practices that faith in totality.
So when you use the word ethnicity, do you know what you had in mind?
I could probably expand on that and say I don't know who placed that there or the reason why they placed that there, so I couldn't answer that question.
It's been answered already.
It was answered, that question was answered, but that wasn't quite my question. What I heard you say, and maybe I misunderstood you, was that you saw the bracelet, it was there, but because you did not know the ethnicity of the person that placed it there, you did not know whether that was a spiritual offering or just something somebody left behind. So my question was, when you used the word ethnicity in that description of how you would know, what were you referring to as ethnicity?
I object to the form of the question because it misstates his prior testimony. I believe the question he responded to was this a traditional cultural practice? And that's a different question than is being posed by Mr. Sinkin.
When you were asked if this was a traditional cultural practice, if I'm correct, your answer was, because I don't know the ethnicity of the person engaging or placing the bracelet there, I can't know if that's a traditional cultural practice.
Correct.
So my question is, when you said ethnicity in that testimony, what did you mean by ethnicity?
Referring to a practice that is a traditional cultural practice would be defined by a traditional cultural practitioner, which would be defined by somebody who is of Hawaiian, in this case, Hawaiian ancestry.
Thank you. Are you familiar with the cultural studies done by Kepa Mali on the importance of Mauna Kea?
Not conversantly. I've read them in the past, but I haven't read them recently.
Are you familiar with or given access to the document that Kepa Mali provided to Kahukumana regarding the hundreds of different ceremonies conducted on Mauna Kea by practitioners?
No.
You also testified that a heiau can be present with no physical manifestation. Do you remember saying that?
Yes.
And can you elaborate for us on what you meant by that?
Yes.
Is that your elaboration? Please.
A heiau can, from my interpretation, can be just a place. It doesn't have to have, in the context that we were having that discussion, I was being asked about large rock constructions. And I replied that a heiau does not have to have a large rock construction. A heiau can be just a place on the landscape.
Identified by spiritual practitioners as a heiau.
Yes.
And is it, are you aware that heiaus are square?
No.
Okay. You referred to some of the items placed on or near the TMT site as a cultural symbol of protest. Do you remember using that phrase?
Yes, I do.
Can you explain what you meant by a cultural symbol of protest?
In that context, I think we were referring to the ahu that were placed in the roadway, and those were built in a somewhat traditional cultural style of construction, but were, from my interpretation, built as symbols to protest against the construction of the 30-meter telescope.
And could a cultural symbol of protest also be a spiritual act?
I'm not sure that I know the answer to that.
Well, the people building the ahu that you termed a cultural symbol of protest, could they have been engaged in a spiritual act of building that ahu?
Objection, calls for speculation.
Mr. Sinkin, you're asking him to guess?
I'm sorry?
Are you asking him to guess?
I'm asking him, is it possible that it was both a cultural symbol of protest and a spiritual act? Or does he exclude spiritual act from cultural symbols of protest?
Maybe you can ask him the last question. That might be
okay.
Better.
Do you exclude, when you say it's a cultural symbol of protest, does that exclude the possibility that it's also a spiritual action?
No.
Thank you. Among your archaeologist colleagues, who would you identify as an expert in identifying and understanding Native Hawaiian cultural and spiritual practices on Mauna Kea?
I'm not sure, again, I'm not sure if I could identify anybody who's an expert in cultural spiritual practices on Mauna Kea that is purely an archaeologist.
Well, purely an archaeologist as opposed to what?
Well, no, I'm just trying to understand your question. Who would you consider, if you gave me a list of archaeologists, I could look at that list, but
I see.
I'm not sure who you're considering an archaeologist.
Well, you're not sure who. I'm using your term archaeologist, however you would use that term in your archaeologist community of colleagues of yours in archaeology. Is there someone that you think of as an expert in the traditional and cultural practices of Native Hawaiians on Mauna Kea?
No.
Okay. You were cross-examined by Mr. Freitas earlier, who's an expert on the placement of stones. I'm wondering if there's an archaeologist you know that could be so qualified as an expert in the placement of stones.
In determining, when we had that discussion, when I was talking with Mr. Freitas,
yes,
it was a discussion about whether natural features that were naturally accreted were actually man-made, and in the context of those features, determining whether those are natural features or man-made features. I'm confident in my abilities as an archaeologist to determine that those are natural features.
The distinction between natural features and man-made?
Yes.
Okay. In considering the meaning of sites, if you have a site that is considered so sacred that very few people go there, how does an archaeologist deal with assessing the sacredness of that site or the importance of that site to the people of that area if they don't go there because it is so sacred?
I'm not sure I understand that question.
I didn't mean it as a trick question. It may have come out that way a little bit. Well, let's say that you viewed the summit of a mountain as the realm of the gods and so sacred that humans rarely entered it. So you would not expect to find ahus or other constructions by humans in that site because they would rarely enter it. How would an archaeologist entering that site know whether it was sacred or not?
If we had access to the information that practitioners considered it sacred, then we would have that information from that source.
Right. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Sinkin. Mr. Kanaele is not present. Mr. Vicente?
Dwight Vicente. Good afternoon, Mr. Rechtman.
Good afternoon.
Look at a couple questions. Are you native Hawaiian?
No, I am not.
Have you been naturalized to the Hawaiian Kingdom?
No, I have not.
Your work as an archaeologist, is it because somebody's trying to develop the lands?
For this particular
Yes.
project, we're working in the capacity as archaeological monitoring. So we're only working if the project is going forward and lands are being developed, then we're on site in a monitoring capacity.
Is it the Hawaiian Kingdom trying to develop the government lands?
I don't know anything about the Hawaiian Kingdom developing any lands.
Who is developing the lands?
30-meter Telescope Corporation, who's now becoming TIA or TIO.
Are they authorized by the Hawaiian Kingdom to develop the lands?
I don't know.
I guess that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vicente. Mrs. Freitas?
Aloha, Cindy Freitas.
Hi.
Aloha. Excuse me if I'm not sure some of these questions were asked, but what is the proper protocol for an archaeologist doing field work?
Excuse me, that's a really broad question. I'm not sure I know what you mean, protocol.
When you're going out into the field to examine, like, for instance, Area E, before any constructions are going to get built out there, what is the proper protocol? Do you do a preliminary walk? Do you do some kind of exploration out there or something?
We did not do the preliminary work, but generally speaking, the first step in the process is going out to the area, having the area identified. That's the study area or the project area. Typically, we walk the entire area. Typically, we contact knowledgeable people about the area and then generate any kinds of maps or documents or photographs or recordings, and also do historical background research to generate any history of the area and write a report that contains all of that information combined. The historical background information, any oral information we get, and the results of our walkover, and if necessary, subsurface testing if we determine it to be appropriate.
Was there any find spots in that area of Area E?
Again, I didn't conduct the preliminary work for this project. A different company, I'm not sure who did, but we did not.
Okay, in your testimony, you mentioned you did 800 sightings of archaeologists' work island-wide, and you also worked in the military. The U.S. military used specialized electronic equipment to look for bones and other artifacts below the surface. Have you considered using specialized equipment to look for bones below the surface on the TMT site?
No.
But did you use that in the military as an archaeologist?
I was a civilian working with the Department of Defense at a military installation at one point, and in the course of that work, I'd never used any kind of technology like that, no.
Of all 800 cultural projects conducted in Hawaii, have any of this project faced any opposition by Native Hawaiians?
Yes.
A lot? Half of it? 3/4 of it?
I would say a very small percentage of it.
You had mentioned in one of the examiners' question, the regulatory thing that is recorded to Hawaii Historical Society. Define what is regulatory thing.
I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to.
When you record things to Hawaii Historical Society, you're recording new things?
Again, I'm not sure. I mean, if we're talking about the State Historic Preservation Division.
Yes.
So when we do a report or any study, we report on everything that we find, whether they're new or old in the area.
And when you report this, what does it fall under? I know it can't fall under historical because it has to be 50 years or over. But as far as new find spots, how is this determined?
So what we do is if we document something that we determine is a newer feature, a newer stacking of rocks or something like that, we just document its presence. We don't evaluate it. We don't determine its origin beyond its being recent. But we document that it's there, take a picture of it.
Were you present when they did the geothermal on the testing site?
Just a clarification, the geotechnical.
Yes.
I wasn't there the entire length of that project, but one of my staff members was, and I was there maybe on 2 or 3 separate occasions during that project.
So when they dug 85 feet into the ground and brought out all those material, what type of findings did you guys come across?
There were no archaeological findings.
Was there any water, any type of moisture going through that?
I don't remember seeing any water.
So when the crusher was up there, the time they were doing that road and they got the permit for the groundbreaking, at what point, when those rocks are coming out and going to the crusher, at what point do you guys go and search if there's any archaeologists, any archaeology things in there?
We look at the rocks before they're even broken up and placed in the crusher. We look at the landscape where they're actually getting the material from.
And were there any findings in that?
No.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Freitas. And Mr. Freitas went out of order for this witness, so he's already done. Is there any redirect is there anybody else here that we missed? Okay. Any redirect examination?
No redirect.
All right. Mr. Rechtman, thank you very much for coming back.
Thank you.
Your Honor, for the first time during the course of these proceedings, I have
Speechless?
underestimated the time it would take to complete a witness. So I have scheduled both Heather Kaluna and Paul Coleman to fly in either tonight or tomorrow morning.
All right.
To be available to testify tomorrow.
Yes.
They had been here previously waiting, but we were never able to get them on due to other witnesses being cross-examined.
Okay.
So I apologize.
No apology necessary. I think that was the plan, and we're good with that. So tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock, we have who first, please?
Dr. Heather Kaluna.
Thank you. Dr. Kaluna, and then subsequently, Mr. Coleman.
Dr. Paul Coleman, yes.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any housekeeping matters? Oh, Mr. Kanoha, no? Your wand? Oh, sorry. Mr. Fergerstrom?
Yes, I have 2 pending motions in front of you. One is to recall Mr. White, and also to recall Mr. Sanders. Mr. Sanders.
I'll take them under advisement.
You've mentioned that before. Have you taken the time to do that?
I'll take it under advisement.
Thank you.
With regard to your discovery, if you think you have anything missing, please go ahead and take it up with TIO. If they do not produce it, then you may go ahead and file something. Otherwise, I don't know how to help you. All right? Thank you. We'll stand adjourned for the day.
Contested case hearing for the 30-meter telescope project, a proceeding for the State of Hawaii, DLNR, Board of Land and Natural Resources.